Chapter 1509. When Su Ming looked at 7 moons sect at the foot of the mountain, one of the 7 sects and 12 clans in ancient Zong trembled and rumbled in an invisible manner. It was One Dao sect and Azura clan from the 12 clans. One Dao sect was rumored to be the oldest sect in all of ancient Zong aside from the royal family. Its foundation was so deep that it was difficult for the other sects to compare to it. It was especially rare for anyone to find its location. It was an ancient temple, and within it were 3 statues. They looked peaceful, but they had been there for an unknown number of years, which was why cracks had appeared on them. There were many of them, and they intersected with each other to form a picture. When anyone saw it, they could not help but wonder whether there was a world in the picture formed by the cracks. One Dao sect existed in the world formed by the intersecting cracks on the 3 statues. In fact, more accurately speaking, One Dao sect was a sect that existed in all the cracks in the world. As long as there was a crack, One Dao sect could exist. That was why it was mysterious, bizarre, and feared by others. At that moment, when the 12 great sect elders of 7 Moons sect woke up and set up the rune, all the crack spots in all the regions of ancient Zong let out cracking sounds, and the number of cracks increased. It was especially so for a mountain. From the distance, it looked dark red. There were countless cracks on it, but it did not crumble or explode. There was a lake of fire in the mountain, and the heat was astonishing. It was as if anyone who fell into it would instantly be burned to a crisp. There was a huge stone in the lake of fire, and it was also covered in cracks. Sitting on it was a half-naked man. His skin was cracked, and not a single part of it was unscathed. His hair was crimson, and it resonated with the lake of fire. At that moment, he opened his eyes to reveal his pupils. In fact, even his pupils were covered in cracks, and at first glance, they looked like blood capillaries. "My brother, have you also joined a sect?" "Judging by the ripples of power, it's from 7 Moons sect." The man grinned, and killing intent appeared in his eyes. "I wonder if you're awake now, or if you're still confused. If you're awake, then all the people in the world are drunk, and you're the only one who's awake. I wonder how it feels. If you're confused, then all the people in the world are awake, but you're the only one who's lost. No matter what, it should be beautiful. It's just as I said before, the fight between us has just begun." The man laughed loudly, and as he did so, his red hair that covered a small part of his face danced in the air, revealing his cracked face. If Su Ming was there, he would definitely be able to tell at first glance that this person looked like Lei Chun, but more like the much younger old man extermination. At that moment was a huge stone monument erected in a desert to the west of ancient Zong. There were no words on it, but if anyone with extraordinary power came and saw it, their hearts would immediately roar, as if they had seen a sea of blood and countless ferocious beasts. Azura of the stone was a gate. It was Azura's sect, and Azura of the Azura of Azura. The Shura realm was a world that had been created. In that world, there existed the strongest sect. That sect's name was Shura. At that moment, in the dark world of Azura realm was a huge, ferocious beast that was 100,000 feet big. It had the form of a human, but there were 3 spiral horns on its head. It sat cross-legged on the ground, and around it was a layer of mud and skeletons. There was a young man sitting cross-legged on the head of the humanoid beast. That young man was dressed in a white robe and had an indifferent expression on his face. As his black hair fluttered in the wind, he opened his eyes slightly, and an aggressive glare shone in them. There seemed to be a figure in his right eye, and it was a man dressed in an emperor's robe. "You've gone through 3,000 years of trials. I wonder how different you are compared to the past. Are you still that foolish brother of mine who could live his life foolishly for the sake of friendship? If you are, then perhaps in less than 3,000 years, you will be eliminated." The young man smiled faintly, but when he did so, a hint of derision appeared in the eyes of the figure in the emperor's robe in his right eye. At the instant that derision appeared, the young man's smile froze. "You are me. You are the clone of soul I sent to disrupt Xian Tian's trial in the past. But now that you've returned, you refuse to fuse with me. The young man's voice was dark and cold. He spoke slowly, as if he was talking to himself. How laughable! I am Dtion, a life born during the 967th Aeon in harmonious Morris Alba. What connection do I have with you? How laughable that you don't know it. The figure in the young man's right, I was Dtion, and the derision in his cold sneer became even stronger. Harmonious Morris Alba's era has been destroyed for countless eons and was devoured by the mystics. Your memories are in truth fake. I added them in to disrupt his trial. You still don't understand what is real and what is fake. The young man lifted his right hand swiftly and tapped his right eye. I, Dtion, know what is real. The world I live in is real, and the world you live in is fake. This is the world that appeared when Su Ming possessed you. This is your possession. Dtion laughed loudly. Resolve appeared in his eyes. When he saw the finger approaching him, pain instantly appeared on his face, as if he had been sealed. Su Ming, if you can wake up, you will be the black-robed man sitting on the feng shui compass. If you lose yourself in it and believe in this world, you will no longer be you. Dtion's voice slowly became weaker. When a young man pulled his finger back, Dtion's figure disappeared from his eye. Instead, it was hidden and sealed in his body. You have already lost yourself. If that is the case, then refine yourself in my body. Possession. This absurd thought should be what my brother is thinking right now. Su Ming. So he has always thought that his name is Su Ming, the young man said calmly. A cold sneer appeared at the corners of his lips, and he closed his eyes. Su Ming averted his gaze from the sect beneath him in Seven Moons sect. To the right of the mountain was a protruding cliff at the mountainside, and he chose a house that no one seemed to be living in. The house was very simple. There were no carved balustrades or jade walls, nor were there any exquisite pavilions. It was as ordinary as a wooden house. Besides a table, chairs, and a wooden bed, there were no other decorations in the house. It was neat, clean, and simple. Su Ming swept his gaze across the area, then lifted his right hand and swung it outwards. Immediately, a seal appeared in the area. Once it enveloped the place, Su Ming sat down cross-legged outside the house, just like how he had sat alone under the wooden house by the river of forgetfulness. 7 Lives Art. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He lowered his head and looked at the blue plate in his hand. His gaze landed on the picture of the mountains carved on it, and he sank into deep thought. Time trickled by, and in the blink of an eye, 3 months went by. During them, no one came to disturb Su Ming's wooden house, but most of the cultivators in the mountain learned of his existence. The people who stayed in the mountain in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky were not disciples, but private cultivators. They belonged to the private cultivators of the same generation as Lon Lon. They could be considered to be part of Seven Moons sect, but they could not be considered to be part of Seven Moons sect. Su Ming had also noticed that there was another woman in the mountain besides Lon Lon. She was also the disciple of the middle-aged man in the sky-blue Taoist robe. She was in a mountain with Lon Lon, but she was not at the summit, but at the foot of the mountain. Over the past 3 months, Su Ming had been sitting outside the house and staring at the plate in his hand. The 7 Lives art in the place had piqued his interest. It seemed to be a great Tao art that could allow him to increase his level of cultivation with his current level of cultivation. Before this, Su Ming might have already reached the first level of Tao Divinity Realm, but his understanding of the method to increase his level of cultivation was still rather vague. As he studied it, he gradually gained some epiphanies. 7 Lives art might seem complicated, but in truth, the principles behind it are also very simple. I can make my shadow fade away 7 layers and turn it into 7 lives. This is different from creating clones. I can use my shadow to exchange for my life. Another month passed. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. Under the setting sun, he lowered his head to look at his shadow. After a moment of pensive silence, Su Ming lifted his right hand and pointed at his shadow. With it, his shadow immediately distorted and became indistinct. When Su Ming tried to cast the 7 Lives art he had come to understand, bell chimes suddenly echoed in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky. The bell chimes came from the distance. When they reverberated through the mountains, they turned into countless echoes. At the instant they shook the entire area, bell chimes rang in the third layer of sky beyond the sky. When the same bell chimes appeared in the second layer, and even the first layer, Su Ming frowned. He stopped trying and lifted his head to look into the distance. He saw countless runic symbols appearing in the sky above 7 Daos sect. They intersected with each other and turned into a circle that looked like a huge feng shui compass. However, the feng shui compass was slightly indistinct. It was because it was not in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky, but the 4th layer, which was why Su Ming found it to be indistinct. Su Ming's pupils shrank slightly. When he stared at the feng shui compass, he saw a long arc charging out from a mountain that corresponded to his mountain. It charged towards the feng shui compass formed by the runic symbols. It was Yi Long. The white-robed Yi Long took a step forward in midair and arrived on the huge feng shui compass formed by the runic symbols. Once he swept his gaze across the area, he sat down cross-legged. Yi Long's figure was also indistinct when Su Ming looked at him. This was because the world he lived in was different from Su Ming's. He could not see Su Ming, but Su Ming could see him. I, Yi Long, have come to the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky to challenge 7 Moons sect for the Tao Divinity Shadow, Dissension Rune. Su Ming apologized again. He was incredibly gloomy when he wrote his story that day, and he did not dare to write anymore. He did not know whether something like this would happen again, because he needed to focus when he wrote his story. He did not need to think about anything else besides the plot. Sometimes, when inspiration appeared, he had to immediately write. If he thought too much about it, the inspiration would disappear. Chapter 15:10. Permission granted. The entire sect will be watching. If you can't get through the 3rd formation, then you can die. When Yi Long spoke, a low voice echoed in the entire 5th layer of 7 Moons sect sky beyond the sky. It belonged to the red-robed man, Dao Han. Su Ming's expression was calm. He cast a glance at the feng shui compass formed by countless runic symbols. At that moment, the feng shui compass spun and completed the 1st formation. It was also at that moment that Yi Long, who was meditating inside, shuddered. Resolve appeared in his eyes, and he slowly closed them before he sat still on the feng shui compass. Su Ming cast a glance at him before averting his gaze. He lowered his head to look at the blue plate in his hand, and no longer paid any attention to Yi Long. Instead, he began thinking about the 7 Lives art again. Time trickled by. At that moment, there were quite a number of cultivators in 7 Daos sect who were paying attention to Yi Long's challenge rune from different sky beyond the sky. When an hour passed, the feng shui compass filled with runic symbols roared and spun again. Its movements were complicated, causing all those who saw it to feel as if their eyes were blurred. 2nd formation. The red-robed man's voice echoed faintly at that moment, causing even more 7 Moons sect disciples to focus their gazes on Yi Long. Su Ming acted as if he did not hear it. He continued thinking about the 7 Lives art. When 4 hours passed, Yi Long shuddered. Veins popped up on his face. He gritted his teeth and let out a low growl. Immediately, the feng shui compass spun again. The runic symbols rotated, and when light shone 100,000 feet, the red-robed man's voice spoke again. 3rd formation. When his words echoed in the air, another feng shui compass appeared above Yi Long. When the 2 feng shui compasses rotated at the same time, blood trickled out of the corners of Yi Long's mouth, but he continued, persevering. Nearly 8 hours passed. When the sun shone on the morning of the 2nd day, Yi Long let out an astonishing howl. The feng shui compass above him immediately disappeared, and he slowly stood up while trembling. At that moment, the cultivators of 7 Moons sect let out a buzz in Su Ming's ears. I did not let Master down. I have successfully withstood 3 formations. Yi Long sucked in a deep breath, wrapped his fist in his palm, and bowed deeply to a mountain in the distance. When he stood up, he swept his gaze past the mountains around him and suddenly spoke. Wang Tao, I've already passed 3 formations. Do you dare to challenge this Tao Divinity Shadow descent formation like I did before? As Yi Long's words echoed in the air, the inner sect disciples of Seven Moons sect in the fourth layer of sky beyond the sky immediately started discussing among themselves. In fact, it was the same in the third, second, and first layers. Even in the fifth layer where Su Ming was, there were quite a number of people who paid attention to this matter. Su Ming's expression was calm. He cast a glance at Yilong, but he did not speak. Instead, he closed his eyes. He had also vaguely sensed some of the methods to practice the Seven Lives art. After a moment, when he opened his eyes, he lifted his right hand and pointed at his shadow. Immediately, it distorted again, and overlaps appeared. Yilong's voice echoed in the air, but Su Ming did not move even after a long time had passed. He said the same words again, but there was still no reply. In the end, Yilong turned around and turned into a long arc that charged towards the mountain in the distance. Once he left, the feng shui compass formed by the runic symbols gradually disappeared. Seven Moons sect regained its peace, but Yilong's name was deeply engraved in the minds of many disciples. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, another year went by. During it, Yilong challenged the Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension rune for the second time. This time, he got through the fourth formation. 3 years later, he cleared the fifth formation. Another 4 years went by, and he became one of the few people who had cleared the sixth formation. It could be said that during those 8 years, Yilong's name had become famous in Seven Moons sect. There was practically no disciple who did not know him, and he was gradually regarded as the most talented prodigy by the sect disciples. After all, Yilong had only used 8 years to clear the sixth formation. The other people who had also cleared the sixth formation had taken much longer than Yilong. As for Su Ming, he seemed to have been forgotten. It did not matter whether it was Lon Lon or the red-robed man. Neither of them appeared in front of him again. Every single time Yilong ended his challenge, he would stubbornly ask Su Ming whether he dared to challenge the rune. Because of it, Su Ming seemed to have been forgotten, but he was incredibly famous among the disciples in the sects and clans. However, most of his reputation was negative. Over the 8 years, Su Ming had been pondering over the Seven Lives art. During that period of time, he had tried it several times, but he was not satisfied with it. One morning, 8 years later, Su Ming lifted his right hand and formed a seal before he tapped his shadow again. He suddenly bit the tip of his tongue and coughed up a mouthful of blood, causing it to fall into the shadow. His blood melted in an instant, causing the shadow to turn red. As Su Ming slowly pulled his finger back, his shadow immediately started twisting and overlapping with each other, and a red shadow separated from it. It caused 2 shadows to appear under Su Ming's feet. One of them was black, and the other was red. Facial features gradually appeared on the red shadow, and it gradually became the exact same as Su Ming's. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he lifted his left hand to strike the red shadow. With this slap, his figure instantly disappeared. But at the instant it disappeared, the air in the first layer of Seven Moons sect, where Su Ming was in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky, on the protruding wall of the mountain in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky, distorted, and a figure appeared. Naturally, it was Su Ming. It was not a clone, and neither was it a possession. Instead, it was a projection formed by Su Ming's Seven Lives art. It was Su Ming, and there was an unbreakable connection between him and his real body. Once he walked out, he lifted his head and looked at the sky. When he smiled faintly, he turned around and walked down the mountain. He wanted to test the life of his projection and see what was the difference between him and his clone. When he took a few steps forward, Su Ming had already come to understand many things. His eyes sparkled, and he fused with the mountain. When he reappeared, he was already at the foot of the mountain. It's not a real body. It exists with space, which is why it's difficult to destroy it. But it's not a soul either. The Seven Lives art is extraordinary, Su Ming mumbled softly. When he walked down the mountain, he suddenly came to a halt and looked at a bamboo forest at the foot of the mountain to his right. There seemed to be a woman sitting cross-legged and meditating in the bamboo forest. Swaying sounds that sounded like a sun echoed in the area without Su Ming's knowledge. When Su Ming stared at the figure behind the bamboo forest, he knew that the woman was the other disciple of the middle-aged man in the sky-blue Taoist robe. She was a junior sister from the sect whom Su Ming had never met before. He did not disturb her training. He averted his gaze, turned around, and walked into the distance. He went down the mountain and entered Seven Moons sect in ancient Zong. Did you hear? Eldest senior brother Yilong should be challenging the Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension rune in the next few days. I heard from the senior brothers in the second layer that they can already see the signs of the talisman rune. I wonder whether eldest senior brother Yilong will succeed this time. The seventh formation won't be easy to clear. You haven't been in the sect for long. That's why you don't know this. I once heard from someone that the Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension rune is an ancient rune that the 13 great sect elders obtained from some unknown place in the past. There are a total of 30 layers to the rune, and it's said that even the 13 great sect elders can't clear the 27th layer. While Su Ming walked through Seven Moons sect, he ran into quite a number of disciples. Most of them were discussing matters regarding Yilong. After all, over the past 8 years, Yilong's name had become famous in Seven Moons sect. He had cleared 6 formations in 8 years, and this sort of speed was shocking. In fact, quite a number of disciples idolized him with fanatical zeal. Besides, he was the disciple of Dao Han, one of the 13 great sect elders. He might not be a successor disciple, and was just a normal disciple who did not have the right to stay in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky, and could only stay in the 4th layer. But even so, it was enough to make the cultivators in Seven Moons sect envious. It's nothing. It's just the 6th formation. To us, this might be shocking, but some of the disciples in the 2nd layer have also cleared the 6th formation, especially the senior brothers and sisters in the 3rd layer. Almost all of them have cleared the 6th formation, and it's even more so for the eldest senior brothers in the 4th layer. You can't compare them like that. How many years did they take to clear the 6th formation, but Yilong did it in 8 years? Just look at who else managed to do it in 8 years. Isn't there Wang Tao? That Yilong always provokes people, but I really want to see just how strong the person who is even stronger than Yilong in the past is now. Speaking of which, Wang Tao is a little strange. There's practically no news about him. He entered the inner sect with Yilong in the past, but Yilong became great sect elder Dao Han's disciple, and Wang Tao seemed to have disappeared. Discussions continuously reached Su Ming's ears as he moved forward. He naturally did not pay any attention to them. As he moved forward, he saw many people's shadows, and he also saw that once he walked past them, their shadows would distort. They seemed to have become much duller, and he had become slightly stronger than he was in the beginning. However, Su Ming also noticed that there were no shadows under his feet. After walking 1 round, Su Ming gained an epiphany. When he turned around, he was about to return to the mountain, but suddenly an attentive voice came from behind him. "This is senior brother, please wait." Once the voice reached Su Ming's ears, his footsteps came to a halt. When he turned around, he saw a person running towards him from behind him. It was an old man dressed in a normal disciple's robe. He had a protruding mouth and a chin like a monkey's. As he ran, he called out to Su Ming with an attentive look on his face. "Senior brother, please wait, please wait." With just one look, I can tell that you have an extraordinary bearing. It's clear that you're not just an ordinary person. In the future, you will definitely have a meteoric rise and stand above all others. The old man was panting. Once he arrived beside Su Ming, he immediately started talking nonstop. "Senior brother, when I saw you, I felt that we were fated to meet. How about this? I have some spirit cores and medicines here that can help you increase your cultivation base. They can help you rise to power in one go. I usually don't sell them to others, but it's your fault for being fated with me. Come, take a look." As the old man spoke, he got closer to Su Ming and lifted his sleeves to reveal a dozen-something bottles hanging inside. "How about it? Do you like any of them? You know Yilong, right? Let me tell you, if Yilong hadn't bought my spirit cores and medicines in the past, it would have been impossible for him to clear the 6th formation." The old man immediately started introducing the items to Su Ming while bringing out one bottle after another. "I also have some herbs here. Look at this and look at this. I'm telling you, Senior brother, I can't sell this to you. Yilong has already reserved it. And this, I can't sell this. The great sect elder forbade me from selling this. But if you really like it, then we're fated to meet. I'll grit my teeth and sell it to you. The old man's spit flew everywhere. As he spoke, he seemed to have noticed that Su Ming had not spoken, and he instinctively lifted his head to look at him. It was as if this was the first time he saw Su Ming's face clearly. When he did so, he was first stunned, but soon his expression changed drastically. You. Terror and disbelief appeared on his face. During that instant, he felt as if he had run into the most shocking thing in his life. I have uploaded a picture of Su Ming. I think it fits the impression I have of him. Behind him is a sea of blood that surges into the sky, and his black robes exude an evil air. All of you can go and take a look. I have also uploaded a picture of Wang Lin. I have changed the color of his robes according to the reader's requests. Chapter 15:11. You're Wang Tao. At that moment, one of the outer sect disciples in the area remembered Su Ming's appearance in the midst of hesitation. He remembered the legendary blood moon. Almost at the instant he said those words, surprise appeared on the faces of the other disciples in the area. They looked at Su Ming. Wang Tao's name was like thunder in their ears. It did not matter whether it was during the 7 Moons disaster or when Wang Tao had been chosen to enter the inner sect. They might not have heard anything about him since then, but every single time Yilong challenged the Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension Rune, he would say that he wanted Wang Tao to challenge him. All of this caused Wang Tao's name to exist forever in 7 Moons sect. Wang Tao. It's him. I remember now. The reason Grand Honor Attendant Shun was able to advance was because he guided Wang Tao into the inner sect. Because of that, Wang Tao was chosen to join the inner sect, and Grand Honor Attendant Shun became a Grand Honor Attendant. As the people in the area burst into an uproar, Su Ming's expression remained the same. He cast a glance at old Shun, who seemed nervous but had a hint of resentment hidden in his eyes. I want this person. Su Ming lifted his right hand and pointed at Bei Qiong. Bei Qiong's expression changed, and he instinctively took a few steps back. Terror appeared on his face. Old Shun was silent. After some time, a resolute look appeared on his face. When he looked at Su Ming, he spoke with a smile. It has been many years since we last met, so it's naturally not a problem for us to meet over such a small matter. But Bei Qiong is my disciple. Brother Wang, if you forcefully take him, you will be breaking the sect rules. While speaking, Old Shin brought out a jade slip with his right hand. Once he squeezed it gently, a smile bloomed on his face. He had already made his decision in his heart. Wang Tao, oh Wang Tao, I heard that you've come under a sect elder's tutelage. Forget about whether it's true or not. Even if it's true, you still have to obey the sect rules. You're breaking the sect rules by forcing an outer sect disciple to do something like this. Old Chin laughed coldly in his heart. At that moment, he forced down his previous nervousness, and killing intent rose in him. However, he wanted to kill Su Ming fair and square. He wanted to use the rules of the school to punish Su Ming. By doing so, even if the sect elders came to interfere, he would still be standing on the side of the school rules, and it would not affect him. Su Ming's expression remained the same. He no longer looked at Old Chun. He took a step forward and walked towards Bei Qiong. Bei Qiong's expression changed. Just as he was about to retreat, Old Chun grabbed him and pushed him towards Su Ming. Don't be afraid. If you don't want to, no one can force you. He is not an elder, nor is he a deacon. He doesn't have the qualifications to take you away. If he forcefully takes you away, then he will have broken the rules of the sect. Old Chun enunciated each word clearly as he stared at Su Ming. But he, just as Bei Qiong was about to speak, Su Ming closed in on him and smiled faintly at him. He lifted his right hand and swung his arm, immediately grabbing Bei Qiong's arm. With a single move, he prepared to leave. Old Chin's eyes lit up. He immediately took a few steps forward and shouted, Wang Tao, how dare you? Do you really dare to break the rules of the school? I might be acquainted with you, but I can't ignore you breaking the rules of the school. The 37th rule of the school states that in 7 Moons sect, besides the sect elders and deacons, No one is allowed to interfere with the training of the outer sect disciples, much less force them to do anything. This is the protection for the outer sect disciples, because the outer sect disciples are the foundation for Seven Moons sect to continuously become stronger. Wang Tao, if you don't stop, I will report this to the sect, and they will punish you. And everything you've done has been recorded by me. Old Chen took a few more steps forward, and his cultivation base spread out with a bang. When he lifted his right hand, the jade slip on his palm was revealed. Su Ming cast Old Chen a cold glance. He did not speak. He grabbed the screaming Bei Qiong and turned into a long arc, intending to leave. Master, save me. Master, this scoundrel. He doesn't have a shadow. He's a sect member who has mastered the Seven Lives art. Bei Qiong's expression was filled with terror. He quickly screamed shrilly. Once he said those words, the disciples in the area immediately looked towards Su Ming. Old Chen was also momentarily stunned. When he looked over, his pupils shrank. Even if he has mastered the Seven Lives art, so what? Does that mean that he can break the rules of the school? And Wang Tao, you broke another rule. In Seven Moons sect, besides the sect elders, no one is allowed to fly. Only we deacons have the right to temporarily fly when we have to deal with important matters. Old Chen bit down on the rules of the school. As he spoke, he leaped up and charged towards Su Ming. At the instant he flew up, dozens of long arcs charged over from the distance. All of them were deacons of the outer sect. They had received a message, and at that moment, they rushed over. The person in the lead was the white-robed scholar. He had been a head deacon in the past, but due to Yilong, he was now the master of the outer sect. When he arrived, there was an awe-inspiring look on his face. Stop! His voice rumbled like thunder. Once it reverberated in all directions, he saw Su Ming and Bei Qiong in his hands. Sect Master, this person has repeatedly broken the rules of the school. First, he came to the outer sect to forcefully capture a disciple. Then, he flew on his own, even though he's not a deacon or a sect elder. I couldn't persuade him otherwise, so please make a decision. Sect Master, this is the proof. When Old Chen saw the white-robed scholar, he immediately laughed coldly in his heart. He would definitely teach Wang Tao a lesson and let him know that he was not someone to be trifled with. As he spoke, he flung the jade slip, and it charged towards the white-robed scholar. Once the scholar caught it, he frowned and looked at Su Ming. Su Ming was in midair, but he was in no hurry to leave. Instead, he stood calmly and watched Old Chen's previous nervousness turn into arrogance. The white-robed scholar frowned and cast a glance at the ground beneath him. At that moment, there were quite a number of disciples who had surrounded the area and were watching what was happening. He was slightly displeased with Old Chen's actions. While they had to obey the rules of the sect, there were times when most people did not pay too much attention to them. For example, when an inner sect disciple appeared to capture an outer sect disciple, as long as the act was not too overboard, they would usually not pay much attention to it. After all, inner sect disciples were much nobler, and this sort of thing happened frequently, such as needing a furnace or an outer sect disciple to become a servant. There were too many of these things, and they could not manage all of them. Yet Old Chen had seized the opportunity and refused to let it go, which put the middle-aged scholar in a slightly difficult position. If he targeted Su Ming based on the rules of the sect, he would naturally offend the sect elder behind him. Besides, the middle-aged scholar had also recognized Su Ming. He was the disciple who had been with Yilong in the past. The middle-aged scholar also had his own information, and he knew things about Su Ming that others did not know. He had heard that Su Ming had joined sect elder Lan. Junior Brother Wang, how about this? Hand this outer sect disciple over to me, and I'll handle this matter. What do you think? As for the other matters, Junior Brother Wang hasn't returned for many years, and he acted on impulse. We can talk about this, the middle-aged scholar said to Su Ming with a faint smile. A glint appeared in Old Chen's eyes, and he let out a cold harumph. Sect Master, you can't do this. Since Wang Tao has broken the rules of the sect, he must be dealt with, or else if other people keep coming to learn from him, what will happen to us? Right now, we're in front of so many disciples. Sect Master, please be impartial. Old Chen immediately said, since he had already offended Su Ming, and since Su Ming had something on him, he would definitely not let it go so easily. As long as he had something on him, he would be much safer in the future. At the very least, if Su Ming decided to target him, he would have something to say. Su Ming smiled faintly in midair. His expression did not change at all. At that moment, he asked faintly, "Oh, what sort of rules did I break?" The old man, named Chun, laughed coldly, but before he could finish speaking, his face suddenly filled with unprecedented disbelief. The white-robed scholar and the surrounding honchos' faces also fell. "Do you need me to repeat myself?" he said. "First, you violated the rule that forbids flying. Second, you captured an outer sect disciple. The old man, named Chun, laughed coldly, but before he could finish speaking, his face suddenly fell. As for the disciples in the area, they were still in a daze, even though they had also seen Su Ming swing his left hand, and a blue plate appeared in his hand. They did not know what the token was, but the old man named Chun, the white-robed scholar, and the dozens of outer sect deacons clearly knew what the token represented. It could be said to be a supreme plate in Seven Moons sect. Only sect elders could have it, and once they had it, their status could be said to have stepped into the peak of Seven Moons sect. Above them were the great sect elders who were in charge of the sect, and the 12 sleeping great sect elders. Besides these 13 people, there was no one else who could surpass the person with the plate in terms of status in the sect. At most, they could only be on equal footing with the person with the plate. Before the person with the plate, sect rules and sect laws were all a joke. If he wanted to fly, he could fly. Forget about capturing an outer sect disciple. He could even kill the few of them. He could even expel them from the sect with just a single word. "I am Su Yi, the sect master of the outer sect. Greetings, sect elder Wang." As the white-robed scholar's expression changed, he wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply to Su Ming without any hesitation. "We greet sect elder Wang." The dozens of attendants behind the white-robed scholar bowed to Su Ming together with nervous and respectful expressions. As for the outer sect disciples in the area, they fell into a daze and quickly knelt down to worship Su Ming. "Greetings, sect elder Wang." Even the people beside Old Chen bowed to Su Ming nervously. Only Old Chen's face was pale at that moment. There was disbelief on his face. He had not expected that Su Ming would be a sect elder. This was something he could not even dream of. In his eyes, Su Ming was at most a sect elder's disciple, but at that moment, he shuddered and quickly lowered his head. Anxiety and fear instantly returned to him, and he wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply to Su Ming. "Greetings, sect elder Wang. I've uploaded my second senior brother's picture and the female characters from before. I've asked the artist to redraw them. The previous ones were too revealing, so this time, they're classic and fit the temperament. Please reply to their names, and you'll see." Chapter 15:12. What about me? Su Ming smiled faintly, and a faint, brilliant light shone in his eyes. When he spoke faintly, he took a step forward. The monkey-faced old man's face turned incredibly pale. He instinctively moved back and nearly fell. He looked as if he had seen a ghost, but as a cultivator, he still had some self-control. When he moved back, he sucked in a deep breath and quickly forced out a smile. However, that smile looked even more unsightly than if he was crying. It's nothing. I didn't know that Senior had arrived. I was peddling those useless medicinal cores just now. Senior, please show mercy and don't punish me," the old man quickly said. He seemed to have calmed down at that moment, and there was a pleading tone in his words. "Oh," Su Ming stared at the old man before him, and the ghost of a smile appeared on his face. When he took another step forward, the old man's expression changed again, and he quickly took a few more steps back. "Have you truly determined that I am your senior? Or do you know me?" As Su Ming spoke, the brilliant light in his eyes instantly erupted. When he took another step forward, the old man let out a shrill scream, but this time he did not retreat. Instead, he knelt down in front of Su Ming. "Senior, please forgive me." "Senior, Please spare my life. I did not know you before this, but just now, I suddenly noticed that there was no shadow under your feet, and only then did I realize that you're a senior of the sect who has some achievement in practicing the 7 lives art," the old man said anxiously while trembling. Su Ming frowned. He cast a scrutinizing glance at the old man before him. This person's appearance and his words of peddling medicinal cores caused Su Ming's memories to tumble about. He felt as if he had returned to Winestream Tribe and the old man named Bei Qiong he had met. Besides his clothes, the old man was practically the same as the person before him. He had once sold some herbs to Su Ming and had even given him a broken storage bag. When Su Ming first noticed this person, he was not too surprised. The old man before him was not the first familiar person he had met in this world that he found rather strange. It did not matter whether it was Tian Xiezi, Deshun, who did not resemble him in appearance, or Lan Lan. All of them had given Su Ming a unique feeling. That was why even though Su Ming saw the old man's appearance, not a single hint of change could be detected on his face. The waves in his heart did not stir up much either. He only placed it in his heart and slowly paid attention to it. But at the instant the old man saw Su Ming clearly, he had actually been unable to control his terror, and this immediately made Su Ming's interest grow stronger. After all, at that moment, Su Ming did not look like himself, but Wang Tao. It would have been fine if the old man knew Wang Tao, but even if he knew Wang Tao before this, it would still be impossible for him to have such a shocked expression when he saw him. Unless this person had participated in Wang Tao's death, but 8 years had passed since then. Even if he had truly participated in it, with the old man's level of cultivation, he would definitely not lose his composure and be so shocked by Su Ming that his face would turn pale. There was another possibility, and it was also the possibility that Su Ming was the most interested in. That was, perhaps the old man truly knew him, and he was not Wang Tao, but Su Ming. With this suspicion in mind, Su Ming took a few steps forward, and the mighty pressure that spread out from his body was only targeted at the old man. Under the pressure, he wanted to make the old man's mind crumble so that it would be easier for him to tell the truth. But Su Ming did not expect that under his pressure, the old man would give such an explanation. It sounded logical, and even if Su Ming thought about it carefully, he found that it fitted the situation quite well. That was why Su Ming frowned. The old man knelt down with a thud. When he spoke, his voice was not soft. The scene had already attracted the attention of the 7 Moons sect disciples in the distance. At that moment, there were quite a number of gazes looking over. In fact, some people were already rushing over. This matter involved Su Ming's privacy, and he did not want to cause unnecessary trouble. Besides, he could not find any flaws in the old man's explanation either. Su Ming cast a scrutinizing glance at the old man. He saw terror on his face, and besides that, there were no other clues. A barely noticeable glint shone in Su Ming's eyes as he said faintly, "You can leave now." Sweat broke out on the old man's forehead. Before Su Ming spoke, he did not dare to get up. At that moment, when Su Ming spoke, the mighty pressure on his body immediately disappeared, and he quickly got up. A respectful expression appeared on his face, as if he had just survived a disaster. There was also a hint of regret on his face, as if he regretted coming to Su Ming to sell his medicinal cores. His expression matched his previous words. Once he got up, the old man quickly wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply to Su Ming. "Thank you, Senior. Thank you, Senior." As he spoke, he turned around and quickly walked into the distance. Su Ming stared at the old man's back. A faint glint appeared in his eyes, and he suddenly said, "Bei Qiong." The old man did not seem to have heard him. His footsteps did not change. When he was about to leave into the distance, Su Ming smiled faintly. "I still have a storage bag from all those years ago. That storage bag once belonged to you. Even if thousands of years have passed, I still have a way to retrieve your presence from it. You won't be able to leave." Su Ming's words only reached the old man. At the instant the old man heard them, his footsteps became slightly disorderly. He might have recovered in an instant, but the old man's expression had already changed. He knew that at the instant his footsteps became disorderly, he had given himself away. Just as he was hesitating, "I knew it. It's you," Su Ming shouted. With it, the old man was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bough. He instinctively moved, intending to flee, but Su Ming did not move. When he saw the old man fleeing, a hint of a cold sneer appeared at the corners of his lips. With a smile on his face, Su Ming took a step forward. But at the instant he did so, several figures rushed over from the buildings in the distance before the old man. They could not fly in this place, which was why they could only walk quickly. The person in the lead was an old man in black robes, and behind him were 8 cultivators. "How dare you? Who dares to humiliate my disciple like this?" As the old man in black laughed coldly, he swung his arm and charged towards Bei Qiong. Clearly, someone had told Bei Qiong about him kneeling down. When he closed in, Bei Qiong quickly cried out for help. "Master, save me! Master, save me! This person, this villain wants to snatch my medicinal core." When he said those words, the old man did not show much of an expression, but the people following behind him had slightly strange expressions on their faces. Most of the people in the first layer of 7 Moons sect knew Bei Qiong's character. If there was truly a villain, then Bei Qiong looked more like one. I like to see just which disciple is so bold as to commit murder in the sect. This is a violation of the sect rules, and he will be chased out of the sect. As the old man spoke with a cold sneer on his lips, he walked out from the side of the bluestone path between the buildings in the sect and cast a glance at Su Ming. When he did so, his expression suddenly changed drastically. He sucked in a sharp breath and staggered a few steps back. Even the people behind him were stunned. They did not know Su Ming. They were stunned because of the black-robed old man's change in expression and his instinctive actions. The old man groaned in his heart. He had been walking quickly from the bluestone path between the buildings, which was why he had not seen Su Ming. He thought that it was some arrogant disciple who had gone to bully his disciple. That was why his anger surged to the heavens. But at the instant he walked out and saw Su Ming, his heart let out a thump. The others might not know Su Ming, but there was no way he could forget him. The old man was Wang Tao, the old man named Chun, who had guided Su Ming in his cultivation when he possessed him. Ever since Su Ming stepped into the inner sect, the old man might have been slightly resentful during the initial few years, but he had always been anxious, afraid that Su Ming would come back and cause trouble for him. There might be a huge difference in their levels of cultivation, but Su Ming had become an inner sect disciple, and his status was different. He had plenty of ways to make things difficult for the old man. Yet after a few years, when he saw that everything was fine, he gradually regained his awe-inspiring presence, especially now that 8 years had passed. Due to Su Ming having forgotten about what had happened in the past, he had long since forgotten about it. However, this matter was still a thorn in his heart, and it often made him anxious. It was especially so when he heard that Su Ming seemed to have become a disciple of a certain sect elder when he asked around, which made him even more apprehensive for a period of time. Yet there was no news of him for 8 years, and gradually, he buried the matter in his heart. Yet when he saw Su Ming again, everything that had happened 8 years ago instantly surfaced in his mind, causing his angry heart to instantly turn into nervousness. He might not be afraid of Su Ming's level of cultivation, but he was incredibly respectful towards the sect elder behind him. No matter how he tried to find out which sect elder it was, he was even more nervous. Su Ming's gaze landed on Old Chun, and he asked flatly, "Are you the one who wants to chase me out of the sect?" Old Chun's expression changed, but before he could speak, a middle-aged man among the 8 people beside him laughed coldly and pointed at Su Ming before he shouted, "Why aren't you kneeling down when you see Attendant Chun? Why aren't you kowtowing when you see Attendant Chun? Whose clan are you from? Call your attendant over. This matter must be dealt with, or else." The burly man was clearly used to being arrogant, and his expression was ferocious. However, before he could even finish speaking, the old man surnamed Chun stepped forward and slapped him across the face, sending him flying more than 30 meters away. "Damn it, how dare you? Do you think you have a right to speak?" Old Chun immediately said in exasperation. Then, when he looked at Su Ming, He quickly forced a smile on his face, wrapped his fist in his palm, and bowed to him. I see, so it's Brother Wong. Haha, it's been 8 years since we last met, Brother Wong, and you're even more elegant than before. Haha, I didn't recognize you at first. Please don't mind me, Brother Wong. As Old Chen spoke, he wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed to Su Ming. This action and words immediately caused the people in the area to be stunned, and they looked towards Su Ming. After all, Elder Chun was incredibly domineering in the outer sect, and it was especially so after Wang Tao was chosen to enter the inner sect in the past. Once the old man was promoted to a great attendant according to the sect rules, there were few in the outer sect who dared to provoke him. Yet now, he seemed to be behaving in such a manner, and the disciples in the area could not help but start guessing Su Ming's identity. Chapter 15:13. You're Wang Tao. At that moment, one of the outer sect disciples in the area remembered Su Ming's appearance in the midst of hesitation. He remembered the legendary blood moon. Almost at the instant he said those words, surprise appeared on the faces of the other disciples in the area. They looked at Su Ming. Wang Tao's name was like thunder in their ears. It did not matter whether it was during the 7 Moons disaster or when Wang Tao had been chosen to enter the inner sect. They might not have heard anything about him since then, but every single time Yi Long challenged the Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension rune, he would say that he wanted Wang Tao to challenge him. All of this caused Wang Tao's name to exist forever in 7 Moons sect. Wang Tao. It's him. I remember now. The reason Grand Honor Attendant Chun was able to advance was because he guided Wang Tao into the inner sect. Because of that, Wang Tao was chosen to join the inner sect, and Grand Honor Attendant Chun became a Grand Honor Attendant. As the people in the area burst into an uproar, Su Ming's expression remained the same. He cast a glance at Old Chun, who seemed nervous but had a hint of resentment hidden in his eyes. I want this person. Su Ming lifted his right hand and pointed at Bei Qiong. Bei Qiong's expression changed, and he instinctively took a few steps back. Terror appeared on his face. Old Chun was silent. After some time, a resolute look appeared on his face. When he looked at Su Ming, he spoke with a smile. It has been many years since we last met, so it's naturally not a problem for us to meet over such a small matter. But Bei Qiong is my disciple. Brother Wang, if you forcefully take him, you'll be breaking the sect rules. While speaking, Old Chin brought out a jade slip with his right hand. Once he squeezed it gently, a smile bloomed on his face. He had already made his decision in his heart. Wang Tao, oh Wang Tao, I told you that you came under a sect elder's tutelage. Forget whether it's true or not, but even if it's true, you still have to obey the sect rules. You're breaking the sect rules by forcing an outer sect disciple to do something like this. Old Chin laughed coldly in his heart. At that moment, he forced down his previous nervousness, and killing intent rose in him. However, he wanted to kill Su Ming fair and square. He wanted to use the rules of the school to punish Su Ming. By doing so, even if the sect elders came to interfere, he would still be standing on the side of the school rules, and it would not affect him. Su Ming's expression remained the same. He no longer looked at Old Chun. He took a step forward and walked towards Bei Qiong. Bei Qiong's expression changed. Just as he was about to retreat, Old Chin grabbed him and pushed him towards Su Ming. Don't be afraid. If you don't want to, no one can force you. He is not an elder, nor is he a deacon. He doesn't have the qualifications to take you away. If he forcefully takes you away, then he will have broken the rules of the sect. Old Chun enunciated each word clearly as he stared at Su Ming. But he, just as Bei Qiong was about to speak, Su Ming closed in on him and smiled faintly at him. He lifted his right hand and swung his arm, immediately grabbing Bei Qiong's arm. With a single move, he prepared to leave. Old Chin's eyes lit up. He immediately took a few steps forward and shouted, Wang Tao, how dare you? Do you really dare to break the rules of the school? I might be acquainted with you, but I can't ignore you breaking the rules of the school. The 37th rule of the school states that in 7 Moons sect, besides the sect elders and deacons, no one is allowed to interfere with the training of the outer sect disciples. much less force them to do anything. This is the protection for the outer sect disciples, because the outer sect disciples are the foundation for Seven Moons sect to continuously become stronger. Wang Tao, if you don't stop, I will report this to the sect, and they will punish you. And everything you've done has been recorded by me. Old Chen took a few more steps forward, and his cultivation base spread out with a bang. When he lifted his right hand, the jade slip on his palm was revealed. Su Ming cast Old Chen a cold glance. He did not speak. He grabbed the screaming Bei Qiong and turned into a long arc, intending to leave. Master, save me. Master, this scoundrel. He doesn't have a shadow. He's a sect member who has mastered the Seven Lives art. Bei Qiong's expression was filled with terror. He quickly screamed shrilly. Once he said those words, the disciples in the area immediately looked towards Su Ming. Old Chen was also momentarily stunned. When he looked over, his pupils shrank. Even if he has mastered the Seven Lives art, so what? Does that mean that he can break the rules of the school? And Wang Tao, you broke another rule. In Seven Moons sect, besides the sect elders, no one is allowed to fly. Only we deacons have the right to temporarily fly when we have to deal with important matters. Old Chen bit down on the rules of the school. As he spoke, he leaped up and charged towards Su Ming. At the instant he flew up, dozens of long arcs charged over from the distance. All of them were deacons of the outer sect. They had received a message, and at that moment, they rushed over. The person in the lead was the white-robed scholar. He had been a head deacon in the past, but due to Yilong, he was now the master of the outer sect. When he arrived, there was an awe-inspiring look on his face. Stop! His voice rumbled like thunder. Once it reverberated in all directions, he saw Su Ming and Bei Qiong in his hands. Sect Master, this person has repeatedly broken the rules of the school. First, he came to the outer sect to forcefully capture a disciple. Then, he flew on his own, even though he's not a deacon or a sect elder. I couldn't persuade him otherwise, so please make a decision, Sect Master. This is the proof. When Old Chen saw the white-robed scholar, he immediately laughed coldly in his heart. He would definitely teach Wang Tao a lesson and let him know that he was not someone to be trifled with. As he spoke, he flung the jade slip, and it charged towards the white-robed scholar. Once the scholar caught it, he frowned and looked at Su Ming. Su Ming was in midair, but he was in no hurry to leave. Instead, he stood calmly and watched Old Chen's previous nervousness turn into arrogance. The white-robed scholar frowned and cast a glance at the ground beneath him. At that moment, there were quite a number of disciples who had surrounded the area and were watching what was happening. He was slightly displeased with Old Chen's actions. While they had to obey the rules of the sect, there were times when most people did not pay too much attention to them. For example, when an inner sect disciple appeared to capture an outer sect disciple, as long as the act was not too overboard, they would usually not pay much attention to it. After all, inner sect disciples were much nobler, and this sort of thing happened frequently, such as needing a furnace or an outer sect disciple to become a servant. There were too many of these things, and they could not manage all of them. Yet Old Chen had seized the opportunity and refused to let it go, which put the middle-aged scholar in a slightly difficult position. If he targeted Su Ming based on the rules of the sect, he would naturally offend the sect elder behind him. Besides, the middle-aged scholar had also recognized Su Ming. He was the disciple who had been with Yilong in the past. The middle-aged scholar also had his own information, and he knew things about Su Ming that others did not know. He had heard that Su Ming had joined Sect Elder Lan. Junior Brother Wan, how about this? Hand this outer sect disciple over to me, and I'll handle this matter. What do you think? As for the other matters, Junior Brother Wang hasn't returned for many years, and he acted on impulse. We can talk about this, the middle-aged scholar said to Su Ming with a faint smile. A glint appeared in Old Chen's eyes, and he let out a cold harumph. Sect Master, you cannot do this. Since Wang Tao has broken the rules of the sect, he must be dealt with, or else if other people keep coming to learn from him, what will happen to us? Right now, we are in front of so many disciples. Sect Master, please be impartial. Old Chen immediately said. since he had already offended Su Ming. And since Su Ming had something on him, he would definitely not let it go so easily. As long as he had something on him, he would be much safer in the future. At the very least, if Su Ming decided to target him, he would have something to say. Su Ming smiled faintly in midair. His expression did not change at all. At that moment, he asked faintly, "Oh, what sort of rules did I break?" The old man, named Chun, laughed coldly. But before he could finish speaking, his face suddenly filled with unprecedented disbelief. The white-robed scholar and the surrounding honchos' faces also fell. "Do you need me to repeat myself?" he said. "First, you violated the rule that forbids flying. Second, you captured an outer sect disciple. The old man, named Chun, laughed coldly. But before he could finish speaking, his face suddenly filled with unprecedented disbelief. As for the disciples in the area, they were still in a daze, even though they had also seen Su Ming swing his left hand, and a blue plate appeared in his hand. They did not know what the token was, but the old man named Chun, the white-robed scholar, and the dozens of outer sect deacons clearly knew what the token represented. It could be said to be a supreme plate in Seven Moons sect. Only sect elders could have it, and once they had it, their status could be said to have stepped into the peak of Seven Moons sect. Above them were the great sect elders who were in charge of the sect, and the 12 sleeping great sect elders. Besides these 13 people, there was no one else who could surpass the person with the plate in terms of status in the sect. At most, they could only be on equal footing with the person with the plate. Before the person with the plate, sect rules and sect laws were all a joke. If he wanted to fly, he could fly. Forget about capturing an outer sect disciple. He could even kill the few of them. He could even expel them from the sect with just a single word. "I am Su E, the sect master of the outer sect. Greetings, sect elder Wang." As the white-robed scholar's expression changed, he wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply to Su Ming without any hesitation. "We greet sect elder Wang." The dozens of attendants behind the white-robed scholar bowed to Su Ming together with nervous and respectful expressions. As for the outer sect disciples in the area, they fell into a daze and quickly knelt down to worship Su Ming. "Greetings, sect elder Wang." Even the people beside Old Chun bowed to Su Ming nervously. Only Old Chin's face was pale at that moment. There was disbelief on his face. He had not expected that Su Ming would be a sect elder. This was something he could not even dream of. In his eyes, Su Ming was at most a sect elder's disciple. But at that moment, he shuddered and quickly lowered his head. Anxiety and fear instantly returned to him, and he wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply to Su Ming. "Greetings, sect elder Wang." He uploaded a picture of his second senior brother, and behind him was the 9th summit. He was a man who was as bewitching as a flower, and today, he uploaded a picture of Ling Muin. Wanair. Also, he asked the artist to redraw some of the pictures of women. The previous pictures, like Su Hui's, were too revealing. Now, they were redrawn to be very classical and fit the artistic conception. Chapter 15:14. "I lack a servant," Su Ming said faintly while standing in midair. He cast a glance at Bei Qiong, who he had seized with his right hand. At that moment, Bei Qiong's face was stark pale. When Su Ming looked at him, despair and pleading appeared on his face. "Sect elder Wang, it is his serendipity that you value this person. There was a misunderstanding just now, and I hope that you will not mind it." The white-robed scholar stood up and spoke respectfully to Su Ming. He did not doubt Su Ming's identity. This was Seven Moons sect, and no one would be bold enough to pretend to be a sect elder. Besides, in the white-robed scholar's eyes, Su Ming was a member of Seven Moons sect. If he pretended to be a sect elder in this place, he would be exposed in an instant. Besides, the plate had already spread out ripples, but no sect elder had come to him. This was a telling sign. "Sect elder Wang, please forgive me. I was reckless in this matter. My disciple was fortunate enough to become your servant, and it is his serendipity," Old Chin quickly said. He forced a smile on his face, but there was terror in his eyes. He was completely terrified by Su Ming, but it was not because of his level of cultivation. Instead, it was because of Su Ming's status in the sect. He no longer had any intention of provoking him. In fact, the regret he felt at that moment made his heart tremble. Su Ming shook his head. When the hearts of the people in the area let out a thump against their chests, his gaze landed on Old Chun. The ghost of a smile remained on his face. Becoming my servant is a serendipity. Yes, this is naturally a great serendipity, and it is something that everyone desires. Bei Qiong, follow me well from now on. You must become a role model for your senior and junior brothers. Old Chun quickly said. Then come with me. I will not choose Bei Qiong as my servant, but you. Su Ming's words were calm, but when they landed in Old Chun's ears, they were like a bolt from the blue. He was momentarily stunned, and his expression changed drastically again. He instinctively moved back. This is... He was practically unable to speak coherently. Sect Elder Wang, I am the head attendant of the outer sect. This is... A large amount of cold sweat instantly broke out on Old Chen's forehead. Sect Master Su, I don't know much about the sect rules. You can handle this. Su Ming's smile remained on his face. Since Old Chun had used the sect's rules to speak, then Su Ming would also choose to use the sect's rules. In truth, it was not Su Ming's personality to target the old man. Based on his personality, he would have just killed him. But when he possessed him, he sensed Wang Tao's hatred towards the old man. It was a hatred that could not be resolved even if he killed him. He needed to continuously torture him. Since he had already possessed Wang Tao, Su Ming did not mind fulfilling some of the dead man's wishes. This matter, reporting to Elder Wang, according to the sect's rules, the elder could decide the fate of the outer and inner sect disciples at will, including the deacons. If there is any rebellion, they can be killed immediately. However, if there are other elders who want to stop this, then the Council of Elders will have to make a decision, the white-robed scholar quickly said. As he spoke, he cast a cold glance at the old man named Chun. Su Ming nodded and closed his eyes. After about a dozen-something breaths passed, he opened his eyes and smiled faintly at Old Chun. Looks like there aren't any other sect elders who want to stop this. As for you, do you want to become my servant, or do you want to be wiped off? Su Ming's voice was flat, but to Old Chun, it sounded like a funeral bell had tolled. As he trembled, he looked around him, then gritted his teeth. I am willing to become the elder's servant. When he said those words, the bitterness in his heart could not be described with words. But what else could he do? He could see Su Ming's killing intent. If he refused, he would immediately be killed. If he fought back, he would die even more wretched deaths. This was the will of a Seven Moons sect elder, the supreme existence that stood above all others. Then come with me. Su Ming nodded at the white-robed scholar. His expression remained the same. He cast a glance at Old Chun, then turned around and grabbed the pail Bei Qiong before turning into a long arc and leaving into the distance. There was a conflicted look on Old Chen's face. In his anxiety and fear, he had to fly up and follow behind Su Ming. He comforted himself continuously. His level of cultivation was clearly higher than Su Ming's, and there were many people in the area. If they were in a place with fewer people and Su Ming did anything, he would at least have the ability to protect himself. This thought allowed him to find a hint of confidence in his nervousness. When Su Ming left, the crowd was still shocked by what had happened. After a long while, the crowd slowly dispersed, but Wang Tao's name immediately spread through the outer sect like a violent gust of wind. The other sect elders of Seven Moons sect clearly knew about Su Ming's identity a long time ago, but none of them wanted to spread it, which was why it became a secret. When Su Ming revealed his identity and exercised his rights as a sect elder, the other sect elders did not want to interfere and stop him because of such a small matter. After all, since ancient times, the number of great sect elders would be the same as the number of sect elders. This had never changed since ancient times. All those who became sect elders were the chief direct disciples of the 13 great sect elders. They were also the sect leaders who were in charge of the cultivators in their respective lines. For example, Lan Lan was the sect leader of the line, led by the man in the sky-blue Taoist robe. But 8 years ago, Su Ming had appeared, causing the number of sect elders in Seven Moons sect to increase to 14 when there were still 13 great sect elders. This matter should have caused an intense dispute in Seven Moons sect, but strangely, each sect elder received a message from their sleeping master, and it was something that all the great sect elders agreed to. Even the red-robed Dao Han, who had been in charge of Seven Moons sect for the past few eons, did not raise any objections, which made it seem as if they had tacitly agreed to it. Because of it, the first time Su Ming revealed his status as a sect elder was a small matter that was not worth mentioning. Besides, the people also understood what had happened between Su Ming and the branch of the attendant who guided him in the past. Naturally, no one tried to interfere. They did not want to offend both Su Ming and Lan Lan, two sect elders at the same time. With Bei Qiong in hand, Su Ming turned into a long arc that charged to the mountain. Old Chen followed behind him. Before long, the three of them arrived at the first layer of sky beyond the sky. It was right in front of the cliff where Su Ming stayed in the wooden house in the fifth layer. In that place, Su Ming lifted his foot and stepped on the ground. His body instantly spread out and turned into a shadow that covered Bei Qiong and Old Chen. Then, he charged into the air and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. He was still in front of the cliff. When Bei Qiong and Old Chen appeared, they immediately saw another Su Ming meditating with his eyes closed. At the same time, they saw Su Ming, who had brought them here. He had turned into a shadow and walked behind Su Ming. When his figure overlapped with Su Ming's, the meditating Su Ming slowly opened his eyes. At the instant he opened his eyes, Su Ming lifted his right hand and pointed at Old Chen. The old man immediately let out a shrill scream of pain, and his entire body was instantly enveloped by flames. As they swept through the area, they turned into a gigantic red furnace that enveloped Old Chen within it. His screams of pain continued, but the shock in his heart caused Old Chen to feel a terror that surpassed the pain he felt in his physical body. During the instant Su Ming attacked, he had not been able to fight back. It was as if compared to Su Ming, the difference between him and Old Chen was like that between a child and an adult. This caused his shock and the pain at that moment to form a double suppression on his mind and body. Old Chen was not the only one who was terrified. The pale-faced Bei Qiong was also terrified. This scene caused his pupils to shrink, and he instinctively wanted to take a few steps back, but there was a canyon behind him. There was no place for him to retreat. As his body trembled, he quickly put on an obsequious expression. Sect Elder Wang, your level of cultivation is exceedingly high. Before you came, I already heard enough of these words, Su Ming said faintly, and his gaze landed on Bei Qiong. Bei Qiong became even more nervous. Speak, Su Ming said calmly. I really don't know what to say. Sect Elder Wang, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have tried to sell you those fake medicinal cores. I was wrong, I was truly wrong. Bei Qiong wailed and knelt down to worship Su Ming again. Extreme regret appeared on his face. Tell me, who am I? Su Ming's expression remained the same. He lifted his right hand and pointed at Bei Qiong. Immediately, a gust of black wind appeared and swept around Bei Qiong. As it spun rapidly, the wind was like a sharp blade, causing Bei Qiong to let out a shrill scream of pain. Countless fine wounds appeared on his body, and when the black wind blew past them, they immediately rotted away. The shadow of death instantly enveloped Bei Qiong's heart. I'll give you 10 breaths to think. There is no grudge between us, and I don't want to soul-seek you and harm your life. But if you insist on not speaking, not a hint of joy or anger could be seen on Su Ming's face. He did not finish speaking, but the ghastly chill in his words was clearly felt by Bei Qiong. 1. Su Ming stated flatly. 2. Within the black wind, a conflicted expression appeared on Bei Qiong's face. He let out a blood-curdling scream as more and more wounds appeared on his body. Blood sprayed out in all directions, causing the black wind to turn violet. 3. I really don't know anything. Elder Wong, please spare my life. Why you? You're Elder Wong. I only know that you're Elder Wong. 6. Su Ming's expression did not change. He looked at Black Wind quietly, and his voice was like a funeral bell that rang in Bei Qiong's heart. 7. I didn't lie to you. Elder Wong, listen to me. Bei Qiong's screams grew louder and louder. Most of the Black Wind had turned purple, and as it spun, Bei Qiong's legs started to show some of his bones. 9. Su Ming's expression remained the same. When he spoke, he lifted his right hand and seized the air in the direction of the Black Wind. Immediately, Bei Qiong, who was screaming in pain in the wind, tilted his body so that the top of his skull was facing Su Ming. 10. When he spoke, the Black Wind let out a bang, and Bei Qiong charged towards Su Ming. Just as Su Ming was about to grab the top of his skull and perform a soul search on him. Su Ming, you're Su Ming. Bei Qiong seemed to have used all his strength to scream shrilly. How many times has it been this month? The monthly votes have been pulled apart once more. I'm already haggard, but I can't accept it. Chapter 15:15. Su Ming's pupils shrank in a barely noticeable manner, and his lifted right hand froze in midair. He stared at Bei Qiong with sparkling eyes, and the ghost of a smile gradually appeared at the corners of his lips. When Bei Qiong saw that smile, his heart shuddered. Compared to Su Ming's callous demeanor, he was even more afraid of Su Ming's current expression. It made him unable to guess Su Ming's thoughts and what he would do next. However, he knew that Su Ming would definitely ask him how he knew his name and how he could tell that he was Su Ming, even though he had clearly changed his appearance. Su Ming, how did you know that I am Su Ming? Su Ming smiled and looked at Bei Qiong. He did not deny it. Instead, a glint appeared in his eyes, and a great pressure instantly enveloped Bei Qiong. I'll tell you that you are. Bei Qiong hesitated for a moment, but once he cast a glance at Su Ming, he gritted his teeth. You are Su Ming, and also the third prince of ancient Zong. When he said those words, Su Ming's expression remained the same, but a huge storm raged in his heart. Bei Qiong knew so much, and it caused the light in Su Ming's eyes to become even fiercer. 3,000 years ago, the third prince of ancient Zong left the royal capital and went on an adventure that lasted for 6,000 years. During it, he lost himself and was immersed in the era of harmonious Morris Alba. He lost himself there. He was not the only one who lost himself. All the friends he befriended during his adventure and all the people who formed ties of karmic ties with him were lost because of him. And while my level of cultivation might not be high, as a descendant of the celestial master of ancient Zong, I have a much longer lifespan than a normal person. I also participated in your loss in the past. But I woke up earlier than the others, and once I woke up, I noticed that perhaps it was due to my blood, but I still retain my memories of being lost. But I noticed that the other people who woke up one after another were in a daze, and they no longer had their memories of being lost. It's like one session of meditation and one moment of absent-mindedness. You can also say that a part of your soul has been divided. In the world you were lost in, they were themselves, and in ancient Zong, they were still themselves. His voice was slightly hoarse, as if it was filled with nostalgia. When he looked at Su Ming, a complicated look appeared in his eyes. Harmonious Morris Alba's world is fake. Bei Qiong sighed softly and lowered his head. Su Ming remained silent. After a long while, no changes could be seen on his face. You said so much, but you still haven't answered my question. How did you know that I'm Su Ming? If I look at you now, I won't be able to tell that you're Su Ming, that you're the third prince of the past, but previously, you didn't appear in front of me with your real body. You were just a shadow clone of yourself who practiced the 7 lives art. People could be different, but shadows were like every person's soul. Although they looked different in size under the sunlight, very few people knew that the darkness in the shadow could be seen by those who were observant. However, not many people know this technique, and I have the bloodline of the Celestial Master, so I can see the difference, and also because I recognize your identity. Bei Qiong smiled wryly. There seemed to be a sigh on his face, as if he was regretting seeing through Su Ming's identity. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. The shock and disbelief on Bei Qiong's face when he saw him clearly appeared in his mind. All of this seemed to have a perfect explanation. I've already told you everything I know. Over the years, after I woke up, I've been thinking about how you lost your way back then. This matter is closely related to the second prince and the first prince. The two of them must have joined forces to launch an attack on you while you were lost. Third prince, please wake up. Everything in Harmonious Morris Alba is fake. It's not real, not at all. All the people you met in Harmonious Morris Alba's world can be found in ancient Zong. They're the real ones, and the people in Harmonious Morris Alba are just wisps of lost souls. They are fake. As long as you wake up, they will also immediately wake up and remember you, such as Sect Elder Lawn. She's one of them. 3,000 years ago, when she ventured out to train, she met you, but she can't remember you now because you haven't woken up yet. Third prince, it doesn't matter whether it's for yourself or for your friends. Please wake up. As long as you wake up, everyone will immediately remember you. I don't know what you went through in Harmonious Morris Alba's world later on, but even if the people in that world have already died, as long as you wake up, you will find that they are still by your side. Bei Qiong looked at Su Ming with a hint of pity in his eyes when he spoke softly. I've already finished speaking. If you don't believe me, you can search my soul. I, Bei Qiong, have lied countless times in my life, but only this time. I didn't lie. Bei Qiong lifted his head and stared at Su Ming with a determined look. Su Ming was silent. No one could tell what sort of thoughts were tumbling in his heart at that moment. He lifted his head, but he did not look at Bei Qiong in front of him. Instead, he stared at the sky in the distance. He stared at the blue sky covered by clouds and fog, as well as the sun among the white clouds. Everything was so real. When he cast his gaze over it, there seemed to be no end to the world in the distance. There was only a long crack that looked like it was connected to the sky. As he watched, Su Ming lifted his right hand, and before Bei Qiong could react, he pressed his palm against the top of Bei Qiong's skull. With it, Su Ming's cultivation base spread out and enveloped Bei Qiong's entire body. It crawled into Bei Qiong's mind through his will to search through all his memories. Su Ming saw many things in those memories, and he even saw everything Bei Qiong had said previously. However, this time, he did not see words, but pictures. Bei Qiong shuddered. This sort of soul search was incredibly harmful to a person, but resolve appeared in his eyes. He seemed to have come to an understanding. Since he could not hide from it and fate had arranged for them to meet, then he would wake Su Ming up and let him know what was real and what was fake. When the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn past, Su Ming lifted his right hand and placed it down gently. He did not see any signs that Bei Qiong's memories had been tampered with. It was as if everything was truly what Bei Qiong had experienced. Third prince. Bei Qiong's face was pale. He looked incredibly weak at that moment, and when he looked at Su Ming, he was about to speak. You can leave now, Su Ming said faintly. He closed his eyes and swung his right hand. Immediately, the black wind turned gentle and swept up Bei Qiong's body. It moved through the layers of sky beyond the sky and sent him into the first layer of Seven Moons Sect. When Bei Qiong appeared in the first layer of sky beyond the sky, the wind around him disappeared, but he did not immediately leave. Instead, he stood there and lifted his head to stare at the mountain where Su Ming was. Even though he could only see the first layer, he could vaguely see Su Ming meditating alone on the mountain in the overlapping fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. As he watched, Bei Qiong sighed softly. So, it's not that the first and second princes are so strong that they can't wake you up, but that you don't want to wake up. You're immersed in Harmonious Morris Alba's world. You'd rather sink into the 9 earths than believe in the 9 heavens. When he shook his head, Bei Qiong looked as if he had become much older. He turned around and walked into the distance. His shadow was elongated, and it was under his feet. However, while it looked ancient, he seemed to be wearing a straw cape and a bamboo hat. It seemed to be slowly fading away, and at that moment, it seemed to have overlapped with his shadow once. At that moment, it was slowly fading away, but Bei Qiong did not notice it. Su Ming closed his eyes and sat quietly on the mountain. When the sun set in the distance, a woman appeared outside his house. It was Lan Lan. For the first time in 8 years, she appeared there. She stood beside Su Ming and stared at the dusk in the distance. After a long while, she lowered her head and stared at Su Ming, who had his eyes closed. Without saying a word, she turned around and left. When night fell and the sky was dotted with stars, Su Ming opened his eyes in the depths of the night. His gaze was calm, but in the depths of that calmness was a resolve that could make others stare at him. That resolve was like fire, as if it could burn the world in the night sky. There are no signs of his memories being tampered with. This means that his memories are real, but the truth of his memories doesn't mean that they are real. Su Ming said slowly, "Because my memories have not been tampered with either. If he is real, then I am also real. But there will always be one who is fake." The resolve in Su Ming's eyes shone with a fierce glare. Besides, he revealed the greatest flaw, and it was also this flaw that caused a flaw in his seemingly perfect words. "You should have called me Mo Su, not Su Ming. After all, when I was in Windstream Tribe, I changed my name to Mo Su. After I left, I never met him again. When I checked his memories, the scene in Harmonious Morris Alba ended in Windstream Tribe." A strange light shone in Su Ming's eyes. "But he called me Su Ming." A profound smile appeared at the corners of Su Ming's lips. "Xianzong, is this your world or my world? Both of us know this very well. My will is not something you can change so easily. This is just a battle of arts between you and me." When Su Ming said those words faintly, a clap of thunder suddenly rang out in the night sky. The dark clouds that could not be seen gradually gathered together, and rain fell. The rain was not heavy in the beginning, but in the blink of an eye, it became as if it was pouring. The curtain of rain enveloped the mountains, the ground, and 7 moons sect. However, it was only in the first layer. Su Ming was in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. He could see the rain, but he could not sense it. I uploaded a picture of my eldest senior brother and the bald crane. Eldest senior brother is very mighty. The bald crane has a crystal in its claws, and it looks a little sleazy. Everyone, please go and take a look. Chapter 15:16. Rain fell. The sky beyond the sky could be heard, but it could not be touched. It was just like what Bei Qiong had said in the past. Su Ming could see the path he had taken when he turned around and found the tracks he had taken. But when he turned around and continued walking, he found that the path he took was split into 2. Su Ming stood on the cliff of the mountain with a smile on his lips. There was a freezing chill in his smile, along with a profound meaning. Along with the resolve in his eyes, it turned into an indescribably malicious air. It was as if his eyes could see through the changes in the world, the cycles of life and death in the past, and everything about himself. It was like an epiphany. If a person lost himself in it, then on the day he woke up, perhaps he would only think that he had woken up, but in truth, he would still be lost. If he did not lose himself, then he had to maintain his original heart. He could never, ever lose himself. At that moment, his Tao divinity, who was meditating in the 3rd eye at the center of Su Ming's brow, opened its eyes. Epiphany also appeared in them. The rain, it had come at the right time, and it had come at the right time. More importantly, it had come abruptly. Su Ming did not look at the rain, but at that moment, there seemed to be a figure gradually walking into the distance. That figure was ancient, dressed in a straw cape, and wore a bamboo hat. He looked like the ferryman, and also like his master in Su Ming's memories. During that instant, lightning roared and illuminated the ground. The figure in Su Ming's eyes seemed to have come to a halt. He slowly turned his head around, as if his gaze had landed on Su Ming, but when Su Ming wanted to see his face clearly, the figure had already disappeared when lightning charged forward. Su Ming closed his eyes, but his 3rd eye opened. The Tao divinity in it did not close its eyes either. The light of epiphany grew stronger, and a smile appeared on the Tao divinity's lips. He had understood. For the first time in a world that was both real and fake, he gained an epiphany. It made Su Ming even more determined, and it also made his determination even more resolute. It made his heart calm, and during his first fight of arts against Xianzong, Su Ming's Tao divinity gradually overlapped with each other. As his Tao divinity overlapped, the rain in the world outside became heavier. The curtain of rain covered everything. Even the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky was covered by a hazy rain and fog. It could still be seen, but could not be sensed. It was as if there was an expanse, cosmos, separating them from the first layer. The overlapping feeling of his Tao divinity in Su Ming's third eye became stronger. When the sky roared, thunder shook the heavens, and lightning illuminated the entire area, the overlapping feeling of his Tao divinity in his third eye became stronger. However, there seemed to be something missing. Even though they seemed to be overlapping to form two Tao divinities, it was difficult to separate them. In the end, they couldn't truly become two Tao divinities. I, Su Ming, have spent my life searching for the truth and seeking Tao. If I continue down this path, I will have eternal life behind me. Divine abilities are just a side effect, and the true meaning I seek is the Tao I want to find in Tao. Tao is Tao Tao. Tao Ming Tao. I seek in Tao. Tao. This Tao is my pursuit. This Tao is my direction. I will understand the changes in the world and understand the changes in the cycles of life and death. I will walk down the path and persevere in my beliefs. This is the path of seeking my heart. Just like this rain, I will watch it from sky beyond the sky, but if I want to, a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He lifted his right hand and seized the air in the direction of the foot of the mountain. Thunder roared. When Su Ming pulled his right hand back, there was rain on his palm. The rain fell through the gaps between Su Ming's fingers and turned into a smile on his lips. It gradually grew wider, and when he threw his head back and laughed, the Tao divinity in his third eye at the center of his brow. Suddenly, in this instant, one split into two. Once the overlapping reached its peak, a second Tao divinity appeared. At the instant the second Tao divinity appeared, Su Ming reached a breakthrough in his level of cultivation. From the first level of Tao divinity realm, he stepped into the second level of Tao divinity realm. His hair danced in the air, and his robes fluttered. The rain in the world outside became even heavier. The thunder roared even louder, and the lightning became even brighter. The rain had come at the right time. It had come at the perfect moment. Its arrival caused Su Ming's epiphany to instantly rise to a higher level. As it rose to a higher level, he seemed to have gained a vague understanding of his own Tao. Su Ming's cultivation base erupted from his body at that instant. He reached a breakthrough from the first level of Tao divinity realm and stepped into the second level of Tao divinity realm. If he could take another step forward, then a completely different change would appear, and he would step into the ranks of the few powerful warriors in ancient Zong. Tao spirit realm. Xianzong, I believe that my world is real. I believe that I am Su Ming, not the third prince, and much less you. Xianzong, in this battle of arts of possession, you will attack, and I will counterattack, but there will come a time when I, Su Ming, will attack, and you will also sink into my world. Let's see who will wake up first. Every time you and I fight, it will make me more and more powerful. A ferocious look appeared on Su Ming's face. He swung his arm, and his hair instantly turned purple. That purple hair did not belong to Wang Tao, but to Su Ming. He also stood up at that moment. It was as if the rain around him had turned red due to being dyed in the darkness of the night and Su Ming's will. It seemed to have turned into a vast sea of blood. As the sea of blood tumbled about and roared, Su Ming stood beside the cliff. Beneath him was the canyon and the Seven Moons sect. His long hair was messed up by the wind, but it could not affect his heart. He lifted his left hand, and in an instant, a ball of fire that seemed as if it would never be extinguished floated up from his palm. That fire was formed by Su Ming's will, and it would never be extinguished, just like Su Ming's determination. Su Ming's memories shone in the fire, in the wind and rain, on the cliff, and when the area around him seemed to have turned into a raging sea of blood. Su Ming lowered his head and stared at the fire on his palm. His gaze was no longer fierce, but had become gentle. In the fire, he seemed to see arid triad, the four great true worlds, his three senior brothers, his elder, Songlan, Yuxian, Su Hui, and many more smiling faces, as well as the bald crane. There was Dark Mountain, the 9 summits, and all that Su Ming treasured. He could give up everything for them. Over there was the source of power that could allow Su Ming to persevere and continue down his path. It was also his taboo. After a long while, Su Ming clenched his left hand gently and put away the fire formed by the memories of his divine sense into his palm. When he lifted his head, he stared at the curtain of rain, lightning, and thunder in the sky. Clarity appeared in his eyes. "I am Su Ming." At the moment Su Ming spoke calmly, a large number of runic symbols appeared in the lightning and thunder in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky. They immediately stirred up roars that drowned out the thunder and lightning. At the instant they caught the attention of the people from Seven Moons sect, the runic symbols formed a huge feng shui compass that could be seen in all layers of sky beyond the sky. As the feng shui compass rotated with loud bangs, a figure walked over from a mountain in the distance. He instantly stepped on the feng shui compass and turned into a young man. He was dressed in a white robe, and his eyes were like stars. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and he was extraordinarily handsome. Naturally, he was Yilong. I, Yilong, will challenge the 7th formation of Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension. Master, please grant me permission. Yilong wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply towards the mountain he came from. His voice was clear, and it echoed in the rainy night. It shook the first 5 layers of sky beyond the sky, causing the many 7 Moons sect disciples who were meditating in the rain to immediately open their eyes. As their gazes gathered on him, and the crowd walked out one after another, a bolt of lightning flashed in the sky with a loud bang. It illuminated the entire area and the huge feng shui compass of runic symbols. It also made Yilong, who was on it, appear clearly before all those who were looking at him. "Permission granted," a low voice said. At the instant it appeared, the lightning looked like it was trembling. It did not dare to appear. The thunder was afraid and did not dare to make sound. Even the rain in the sky seemed to have countless ripples at that instant. A red-robed man's figure could be seen in each raindrop. At the instant the voice spoke, Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the 6th layer of sky beyond the sky. It was the world that belonged only to the red-robed man. It was the supreme treasure of 7 Moons sect that only the great sect elder who was in charge of the sect could possess. When the red-robed man's voice echoed in the air, the lightning dared to shine, the thunder dared to roar, and the rain also dared to pour on the ground. Yilong, who was on the feng shui compass floating in midair, stood up at that moment and threw his head back to roar. 7th formation. While his voice echoed in the air, the feng shui compass under his feet rotated with loud bangs. The runic symbols on it rotated and shone continuously, and a second feng shui compass appeared above him. At the same time, another one appeared, and then there were 3 feng shui compasses. Each of the 3 feng shui compasses was larger than the last. When Yilong moved, he appeared on the 3rd feng shui compass. He lifted his hands and pushed them against the feng shui compass. The 3 feng shui compasses roared at the same time, and waves of vast power spread through the area before gathering on Yilong, causing his expression to contort. Veins popped up on his skin, and he let out a low growl. There were a total of 30 formations in the Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension rune. 1 feng shui compass would appear in the 1st formation, and a second would appear in the 3rd formation. 4 feng shui compasses would appear in the 7th formation, and with every 2 layers, an extra feng shui compass would appear. At that moment, as Yilong roared, the 4th feng shui compass appeared above him. It was a talisman formed by rainwater, and a huge feng shui compass formed by talismans floated above the 3 feng shui compasses. They seemed to have fused with lightning, causing the feng shui compass to exude endless sparks. What Yilong wanted to do was to eventually stand on the 4th feng shui compass, and it would mean that he had successfully cleared the seventh formation. Right before all the people's gazes, thunder roared and lightning pierced everyone's eyes. At that moment, Yilong's roar became the only sound in Seven Moon's sect. His body trembled as he slowly stood up. In the end, he moved through the feng shui compasses above him, and at the instant he stood on the fourth feng shui compass, he successfully cleared the seventh formation. Thunder was like a mighty might, lightning was like a glare, and the rain was behind the world. At that moment, Yilong's black hair danced in the air. Once he stood up, he threw his head back and let out a long roar that shook the sky. Wang Tao, it's been 8 years, and you've never responded. Today, I will still ask you this. Do you dare challenge the Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension Rune? His voice echoed in Seven Moon's sect. During that instant, the eyes of all those who heard it sparkled. Su Ming sat cross-legged on the cliff and slowly lifted his head. A brilliant light shone in his eyes. There is no third night watch today, so please allow me to rest for 2 days. I intend to do it again on Saturday. If you have monthly tickets, please give them to me. Chapter 15-17. At the instant he lifted his head, a brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. The rain beyond the sky became even heavier. As thunder roared, lightning flashed, illuminating everything before it returned to night. As lightning flashed, Su Ming looked as if he was surrounded by darkness and light, and he slowly stood up. His robes fluttered, and his purple hair danced in the air. Su Ming stood on the cliff. At the instant he stood up, thunder roared even more furiously. Lightning intersected with each other, causing the entire world to look as if it was continuously changing from night to day. The light and darkness looked as if they were trying to overlap with each other. As you wish, Su Ming said faintly. His voice echoed in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky and reached the fourth layer. Once it caught the attention of all the people in the fourth layer, Yilong lifted his head swiftly, and a brilliant light that had never appeared before appeared in his eyes. His voice continued echoing in the air. It traveled to the third layer, the second layer, and eventually the first layer. During the process, the roars of thunder seemed to be unable to drown out his voice. They became weak, and the light from the lightning seemed to be unable to continue flashing. It was frozen in place. When all the people's gazes were fixed on the sky, Su Ming swung his arm and took a step towards the air under the cliff. With one step, he left the mountain. With another, he stepped into the fourth layer, and with the next, he stepped on the huge feng shui compass and stood beside Yilong. During that instant, the gazes of all the people in Seven Moon's sect were gathered on Su Ming. He's Wang Tao. Wang Tao. He's Wang Tao. Did you hear? He's not an ordinary disciple. He's one of the sect elders. Sect elder, that's impossible. I wonder how many formations this sect elder can clear. If he can't even clear 3 to 5 formations, then he'll be a joke. The buzzing discussions instantly echoed in Seven Moon's sect on the rainy night, especially the outer sect disciples in the first layer. They paid the most attention to that moment. After all, they had more or less learned about what had happened in the outer sect not long ago, and their curiosity towards Su Ming was incredibly great. As for the Seven Moon's sect disciples in the second and third layers, there were few who knew that Su Ming was a sect elder. When they heard it, they were immediately surprised, but when they looked at Su Ming, their gazes were filled with derision. He might not know how Su Ming had become a sect elder, but in the end, everything in ancient Zong depended on one's level of cultivation. If one's level of cultivation was not high, then no matter how great their status was, they would only be able to obtain the respect and politeness of others for a period of time. They would not be able to last long, and they would be like rootless duckweed. As long as a chance presented itself, they might die. Only by possessing a powerful cultivation that matched one's identity would one be able to survive for a long time and truly gain respect. Other than the people from the second and third levels, there are also people from the fourth level who looked at them with disdain. However, most of the people from the fourth level looked at them coldly. They looked at them as if they were looking at a clown. I really want to know what kind of ability this Wang Tao, who hasn't dared to show his face for 8 years, has. I do admire this Yilong, but this Wang Tao, we'll know once we see him. What's there to see about a cowardly person? He actually lives in the 5th level of sky beyond heaven. It seems like the rumors spread by the outer sect disciples about him being an elder are somewhat believable. Elder? What right does he have to be an elder? The divine thoughts in the 4th level echoed in the air. When the people cultivating there looked at Su Ming, their expressions were different, but most of them were aloof. My fellow sect members from the 3rd line, when you see this Wang Tao in the future, you must immediately worship him and respectfully call him Uncle Master. When mocking laughter came from the 4th level, the 7 Moons sect disciples who were training in the mountain projection of the 4th layer of sky beyond heaven, where Su Ming had been previously, had incredibly dark expressions on their faces. The mountain where Su Ming had stayed for the past 8 years belonged to the 3rd line. At that moment, all the disciples who lived in the 3rd line's mountain in the 4th layer of sky beyond heaven were disciples who were of the same generation as Su Ming. They were all frowning at that moment, and their expressions were dark. The mockery from the other lines that reached their ears made them feel incredibly embarrassed. Eldest senior sister, this Wang Tao. Damn it, why does he have to embarrass himself? Since he's already been hiding for 8 years, he should just continue hiding. He's so embarrassing that we can only be mocked by others in the sect. After all, they were disciples of the 3rd line, and they knew more things than the others, such as Su Ming's identity. However, over the years, they had not been willing to speak about it, but right then, they were forced to face it. It's good that he knows his own strength. Then, when we meet in the future, he won't put on the airs of a senior. Shame. This is the shame of the 3rd line. Enough. He hasn't challenged it yet. It won't be too late for you to humiliate him once he's done. A woman who looked to be in her 20s frowned at that moment. Her voice echoed in the air, causing all the people from the 3rd line to fall silent. That woman was their eldest senior sister, and also Lan Lan's head disciple. As the voices in the area buzzed, Yilong stared at Su Ming from the feng shui compass. A powerful fighting spirit appeared in his eyes. When he was in Su Ming's Blood Moon Mountain during the trial, he had never taken that step, and it had become a thought in his heart. That thought surrounded him. It became the reason why he had continuously tried to use the rune to prove himself. It was also the result of him challenging Su Ming. However, Su Ming had never appeared, and it made Yilong even more determined. At that moment, he finally saw Su Ming, and Su Ming could no longer hide from him. It was the first time the two of them met in 8 years. During these 8 years, I've successfully challenged 7 formations. Wang Tao, today I would like to see how many formations you, the eldest senior brother of the trial, can you challenge? Yilong laughed loudly. He turned into a long arc and instantly returned to his mountain. When he stood there, he turned around and looked at Su Ming with sparkling eyes. When he said those words, the buzzing sounds in the 1st to 4th layers of sky, beyond the sky and 7 moons, sect instantly became slightly quieter, but soon the voices grew louder. I remember now. That Wang Tao was the one who surpassed everyone in the trial back then. It said that he obtained more than 140 spirit tablets. Haha, you only remember now? That's right, it's that person. But it's only for a moment. As the discussions continued, Su Ming stood on the feng shui compass and watched the 4th feng shui compass under his feet swiftly disappear. Then, the 3rd feng shui compass and the 2nd feng shui compass also turned into illusions. Then he stepped on the 1st feng shui compass, which was at the bottom. Wang Tao will challenge the Tao Divinity Shadow, Dissension Rune. Su Ming's words were simple. At the instant he spoke, he heard quite a number of mocking voices. It was also at that moment that a voice slowly came from the 6th layer of sky beyond the sky. Permission granted. That voice belonged to the red-robed man, Dao Han. He had to approve Yilong's challenge of the rune because Yilong was his disciple. If it had been anyone else, they would not have had the right to have him personally make the request. But Su Ming was a sect elder, and only the current sect leader of Seven Moons sect had the right to personally approve a sect elder's challenge of the Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension Rune. Perhaps the outer sect disciples in the first layer of Seven Moons sect did not understand this logic, but the disciples in the second, third, and fourth layers all knew about it. At that moment, they instantly fell silent again. The rumors regarding Su Ming being a sect elder seemed to have been verified in an unseen manner. But even though they had fallen silent, most of the Seven Moons sect disciples looked at Su Ming with scorn and derision. Only a small portion of the outer sect disciples in the first layer of Seven Moons sect were excited and hopeful. Su Ming stood on the feng shui compass and lowered his head to cast a glance at the feng shui compass formed by runic symbols under his feet. He remembered the bald crane. If the bald crane was here, it would definitely go to the next place to make the bets, and with an excited expression, it would wait for its next harvest. As Su Ming thought about it, a smile appeared on his face. Once he shook his head, he lifted his right foot and stomped on the feng shui compass. A loud bang reverberated in the air. The feng shui compass started rotating, and a powerful pressure spread out from the runic symbols to gather on Su Ming. I've been quiet for 8 years. It's about time for me to show some of my power, or else it's not good for people to always call out my name. When Su Ming said that faintly, he did not even spare a glance at the pressure that instantly gathered on him. Instead, he lifted his right foot again and stomped on the feng shui compass. With a bang, the mighty pressure that gathered on Su Ming crumbled. The rotating feng shui compass also crumbled. It was instantly torn to pieces, and the countless runic symbols tumbled backwards in the blink of an eye, as if they could not withstand the power of Su Ming's stomp. Second formation. As Su Ming spoke slowly, the runic symbols that had scattered in all directions instantly gathered together to form a feng shui compass again. At the instant it rotated, Su Ming lifted his foot again and stomped on it lightly. Boom! Under the shocked gazes of the Seven Moons sect disciples, the feng shui compass crumbled again. Once it shattered, it tumbled backwards in all directions, as if the mighty pressure and the power of the rune were so weak that they could not even withstand a single blow from Su Ming. As it crumbled, Su Ming floated in midair and spoke faintly. Third formation. Once he said those words, the outer sect disciples in the first layer of sky beyond the sky, who had been filled with anticipation and excitement, immediately cheered. As for the inner sect disciples in the second layer, they were all dumbfounded. They knew just how powerful the first and second formations were. They might not have been difficult to clear, but Su Ming had cleared them so easily with just a few steps. This left them in disbelief. There will be 4 chapters tomorrow. There will be 1 more chapter later. Also, based on the suggestions of the readers, I've changed some of the pictures. I've replied to Tian Xie, Yu Xian, Xianzong, Lu Mei, and Wang Lin. You can see the changed pictures in the prestige section. I guarantee that you will find that they are several times better than before. Chapter 15-18. Compared to the inner sect disciples in the second layer of sky beyond the sky, the Seven Moons sect disciples in the third layer might have been shocked, but their expressions remained calm. After all, it was just the first and second formations. They might not be able to clear them so easily, but it was not difficult for them either. However, the derision that had originally been on their faces had mostly disappeared by then, replaced by seriousness as they stared at Su Ming. Su Ming's act of breaking the rune had already shocked them. Only the people in the fourth layer were still mocking him. This is nothing. It's not that we can't do it. It's just that there's no need for us to do it. It's clear that he doesn't have enough confidence. That's why he's using this method to regain some of his dignity. The first 3 formations are nothing. When the 5th formation is over, the rune will show its power. I wonder whether this person will have the chance to see it. They were not the only ones who reacted this way. Yilong's expression remained the same. His expression did not change just because Su Ming had cleared 2 formations. He had never underestimated Su Ming. Based on his judgment, Su Ming could clear the 5th formation, but he would definitely face difficulties during the 6th and 7th formations. However, in the next instant, their expressions changed. When the feng shui compass gathered under Su Ming, a large number of runic symbols appeared above him to form an even larger feng shui compass. At the instant the third formation appeared, Su Ming appeared on the second feng shui compass above him. He lifted his foot and stepped on it lightly. Booming sounds instantly shook the sky and earth. As they reverberated in the air, they drowned out the thunder, causing lightning to no longer appear. The feng shui compass under his feet crumbled again, and the feng shui compass beneath it also crumbled. The brilliant light formed by the two feng shui compasses crumbling at the same time caused the pupils of all the disciples in the fourth layer of sky beyond the sky to shrink. In fact, some of the disciples in the third layer had already stood up and walked to their respective cliffs. Their expressions changed, and they focused their gazes on the formations. As for the disciples on the second level, they were in an uproar. There was no need to even mention the outer sect disciples on the first level. As their voices echoed out, cries of astonishment rang out. The collapse of the first and second formations was not enough to explain the problem. After all, the first and second formations had a limit. As long as one had enough power to surpass that limit, one could do it. For example, if the limit was 10, then 11 could cause the formation to explode. Similarly, even 10,000 could cause the formation to collapse. Therefore, ordinary cultivators would not be able to tell how strong the formation was. However, as the formation increased, the limit would continue to increase. For example, the third formation was 10 times stronger than the second formation. Yet, as Su Ming's expression remained the same, he still crumbled with a single step. This scene was enough to shock many people. However, it was destined that this rainy night was just the beginning of the shock. At the instant all the cultivators' gazes gathered on Su Ming, his words echoed in all directions and fell into almost every cultivator's ears. Fourth formation. Right when he spoke, the whistling sounds from the rune were piercing to the ears. In an instant, the feng shui compass formed by the two collapsed runic symbols gathered together under Su Ming's feet. The runic symbols rotated at the same time and exuded waves of even stronger mighty pressure. It was as if the might of heaven had descended, as if an invisible hand had appeared out of thin air to seize Su Ming. Su Ming's expression remained the same. Not a single hint of change could be detected on his face. When he spoke of the fourth formation, he lifted his right foot and stomped on it. Booming sounds reverberated through the world once again. As the feng shui compass under his feet shattered, the feng shui compass crumbled. The second feng shui compass beneath it also shattered into pieces. It was as if this was not the fourth formation, but the first formation. This scene shocked the hearts of all the onlookers once again, but before their buzzing and shocked voices could be heard, Su Ming floated in midair. His robes fluttered in the wind, and his purple hair danced in the air. He looked disheveled, and thunder rumbled behind him. As lightning intersected with each other, his body became incredibly clear. Fifth formation. When he said those words, the thunder instantly acted as a foil to him. The lightning wanted to retreat, and the rain came to a standstill. The third feng shui compass appeared under Su Ming's feet. It was so big that when it manifested, the two collapsed feng shui compasses gathered together once more. The three feng shui compasses floated in the air, and Su Ming stood on them. At that moment, his figure became the center of attention. Yilong's face was slightly pale in the distance. He stared at Su Ming. He had not expected that Su Ming would clear 4 formations in one go so easily. He could imagine that Su Ming would clear 4 formations, but he did not expect that it would be so simple. It was so simple that he felt as if everything he had done during the past 8 years had turned into a joke. It made him feel that all the challenges he had issued over the past 8 years were nothing more than mockery. At that moment, the other cultivators in the 4th layer no longer mocked him. Instead, they focused their gazes on Su Ming. No one mocked the people from the 3rd line either, because they were already shocked by Su Ming's feat of clearing the formations. Most of the people in the 3rd layer were already standing at the edge of the cliff at that moment. They were all staring at Su Ming. As for the second layer, it was already occupied by almost all the people, and it was even more so for the outer sect disciples in the first layer of sky beyond the sky. It's just the first four formations. Let's see whether he can clear the fifth and sixth formations so easily. That's right. All of us have cleared more than 7 formations, especially eldest senior brother Fei Feng from the first line. He's the strongest among us, and he's already cleared 19 formations. Besides senior brother Fei Feng, senior brother Qin Tao from the second line has also cleared 17 formations. That's right. There's also senior sister Yu Yin from the third line. I remember that she cleared 16 formations. There are also some others who cleared 10 formations. That Wang Tao is still just a joke. There's not a single head disciple of the 13 mountain leaders from the 13 lines who has cleared less than 13 formations. As the disciples in the fourth layer discussed among themselves, Su Ming lowered his head to cast a glance at the feng shui compass under his feet after the 3 feng shui compasses gathered together again. For the first time, a strange light shone in his eyes. These feng shui compasses, the more I look at them, the more similar they are to Xian Zhang's feng shui compass. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. He could sense that as the 3 feng shui compasses continued rotating, they exuded an increasingly powerful, mighty pressure. That power far surpassed what it was before, but still could not shake Su Ming in the slightest. However, as Su Ming continued watching them, he had a vague feeling that there was some sort of pattern to the 3 feng shui compasses' rotations. Tao Divinity, Shadow, Dissension Rune. Since this rune has this name, then it must be connected to the 7 Lives art. Su Ming fell into a moment of pensive silence. He did not immediately destroy the feng shui compasses like before, but instead began observing them carefully. As he did so, his pupils suddenly shrank. Gradually, he saw 2 shadows on the 2 feng shui compasses beneath him, and they were Su Ming's. The level of the rune, right now, is too low. I can't see too many changes. A brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. This time, he no longer took a step forward but swung his arm. With it, the world roared, and the feng shui compass beneath him shuddered with a bang. As the people in the area cried out in surprise, the feng shui compass crumbled again. The 2 feng shui compasses beneath it also crumbled. The 6th formation. Su Ming lifted his head, and the light of a deduction shone in his eyes. When he spoke again, the 3 feng shui compasses appeared beneath him again, and Su Ming lifted his right hand and swung his arm again. Loud booming sounds shook the hearts of all the cultivators in the first 3 layers of sky beyond the sky. Even quite a number of 7 Moons sect disciples in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky began to doubt their previous judgment. Could it be that he's going to clear the 10th formation? Could it be that we'll see another person clear the 10th formation today? After all, there's only one person in 7 Moons sect who can clear the 10th formation once every 10 years. Could it be that Wang Tao wants to clear the 10th formation? Impossible. With his level of cultivation, it's impossible for him to do this. The 10th formation is a little difficult even for us. That's why quite a number of us have cleared it. But besides our senior brothers and sisters who have cleared the 13th formation and above, none of us can be certain that we will be able to clear it if we try again. That's right. This is too absurd. He's only been in the sect for a few years. There's no way it would be so easy for him to understand the 10th formation. As the disciples in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky discussed among themselves, Yilong's face turned pale, as if he had to maintain his full strength so that he would not be forced back. He stared at Su Ming in a daze, and anguish gradually appeared on his face. He came to a complete understanding. It was not that Su Ming had been avoiding him during the past 8 years, but that he found it beneath him to challenge him. Right then, there was a high possibility that he was annoyed by Yilong's pestering, which was why he attacked. Over the past 8 years, I've always been a joke in his eyes. Yilong can't accept this. I can't. A powerful fighting spirit appeared in Yilong's eyes, but even he knew that it was fake. He had created it, and it was so weak that it would not exist, the 7th formation. He hasn't cleared the seventh formation yet. When Yilong mumbled, he looked towards Su Ming. 3 feng shui compasses gathered beneath Su Ming, and the 4th feng shui compass appeared above him. It was so big that it looked like a plane. At that moment, it floated above Su Ming and rotated along with the 3 feng shui compasses beneath him. As it rotated, Su Ming lifted his head to look, and the light of understanding gradually appeared in his eyes. As the people around him watched and waited, a smile appeared on Su Ming's face. So that's how it is. Then, I'll bring out the 8th and 9th formations at the same time. As Su Ming spoke, he lifted his right hand and swung his arm. This time, the feng shui compass did not crumble. Instead, more runic symbols appeared on the 4th feng shui compass, and they formed the 5th feng shui compass. Tomorrow, I want 4 chapters. I want monthly votes. Chapter 1519. At the instant the 5th feng shui compass appeared, an indescribable buzz rose in all of Seven Moons sect. All the outer sect disciples in the first layer of sky beyond the sky sucked in sharp breaths. All of them stared at the sky with disbelief on their faces. They could not believe it. How could the 5th feng shui compass appear before the 7th formation was broken? What's going on? I've been in the outer sect for many years. Besides Yilong, I've seen inner sect disciples challenge the rune a few times, but this is the first time I've seen it. While the outer sect disciples were in an uproar, the sect master of the outer sect, the white-robed scholar, and Yilong's former guide, sighed softly. He knew that Yilong's pride had caused him to be unable to accept that there was someone in the same generation as him who was stronger than him. That was why he had challenged Yilong over the past 8 years, and it was also why he had ended up in this state. This was clearly an incredibly great blow to Yilong. Yilong lost, completely lost. He chose the wrong opponent. The white-robed scholar lifted his head and stared at Su Ming and the 5 feng shui compasses, and a hint of respect appeared in his eyes. It was not because of Su Ming's status, but because of his actions. He was the sect master of the outer sect, and he had been in Seven Moons sect for many years. He knew what the scene meant. This was a scene that would only appear after someone understood the first 9 formations, and it was also the only thing that would happen. This was not the 7th formation, the 8th formation, and neither was it the 9th formation. It was the 10th formation. Since ancient times, there aren't many people who have been able to jump from the 7th formation to the 10th formation. The other outer sect attendants around the middle-aged scholar were all looking at Su Ming with respect in their eyes. The uproar that was equivalent to the first layer of sky beyond the sky's outer sect disciples was the same in the second layer of sky beyond the sky. The uproar was not much lesser. At that moment, almost all the cultivators in the second layer stood beside their respective mountains and stared at Su Ming in disbelief. They were inner sect disciples, and they knew what it meant because they had seen it happen several times before. They had seen those who succeeded, and they had also seen those who failed, but when it happened, all those who challenged the rune were famous people in Seven Moons sect. It was precisely because of this that they understood just how astonishing the appearance of the 5 feng shui compasses was. The 10th formation. That's the 10th formation. This Wang Tao, he actually gained enlightenment in the 7th formation, causing the formation to change and the 10th formation to appear. While the people in the second layer of sky beyond heaven were in an uproar, the commotion in the third layer of sky beyond heaven was still shocking. There was no longer any disdain in the gazes of the cultivators. Instead, they were filled with excitement and anticipation. They were looking forward to Su Ming succeeding. They were excited because once he succeeded, it seemed like he would not stop. Compared to the Seven Moons sect disciples in the third layer of sky beyond the sky, the core disciples in the fourth layer of sky beyond the sky had their expressions changed drastically. They stared at Su Ming. Since they understood that he was in the 10th formation, the shock in their hearts became even stronger. It was especially so for the disciples who had mentioned that Su Ming wanted to challenge the 10th formation. At that moment, excitement appeared on their faces, and when they looked towards Su Ming, their previous scorn turned into anticipation. When the cultivators who had cleared the 10th formation looked at Su Ming, respect appeared in their eyes. At that moment, it could be said that there was no longer any disdain in their gazes. Su Ming had used his actions to destroy all the mockery toward him. The excited cheers from the third line were even louder at that moment. Quite a number of cultivators among them had already accepted Su Ming, as if they had switched sides. However, they only accepted him as an equal. They did not respect him like they did to their seniors. Whether they could turn their acceptance into respect would depend on how many formations Su Ming managed to clear in the end. It's impossible for him to succeed. There's no way the 10th formation will be so easy. I'll watch him fail. Indeed, if the 10th formation could be easily cleared, I wouldn't have tried 8 times before I succeeded. There were quite a number of such voices in the 4th layer. As the discussions echoed in the air, Yi Long stared at the 5 feng shui compasses in front of him. Blood trickled down the corners of his mouth, and he staggered a few steps back. When he knelt down on one knee, he coughed up a huge mouthful of blood. He struggled to lift his head, and anguish appeared on his face. I can't accept this. When Yi Long mumbled, Su Ming lifted his head and stared at the even larger 5th feng shui compass above him. Not a single hint of change could be detected on his face. When he looked at it calmly, the 5 feng shui compasses started rotating with a bang. As they did so, waves of vast, mighty pressure instantly descended on Su Ming. For the first time in his life, Su Ming felt as if his body was about to split apart. The feeling was very faint, but it stirred up great interest in him. As he observed the 5 feng shui compasses, he did not care about the mighty pressure descending on him. Instead, he paid attention to the rhythm of the 5 feng shui compasses' rotation. Then, he saw a shadow appear on each of the 5 feng shui compasses. It was just like his own shadow, and this scene caused a glint to appear in Su Ming's eyes. This rune is to help the disciples of 7 Moons sect to split their shadow bodies, and it's especially so for the 5 feng shui compasses formed by the first 9 formations. Once all of them appear, the feeling of splitting will spread out so that people can sense it. If they can withstand it, then they will be able to split their first shadow body. In other words, it will be the second life of the 7 lives art, and I've already created a shadow clone on my own. I don't need the rune to split me up anymore. I wonder if another shadow clone will appear if I split myself up. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he slowly closed his eyes to sense the splitting process to verify his thoughts. Time trickled by, and soon, the time it takes for an incense stick to burn was up. The people who were watching Su Ming in 7 Moons sect were all waiting to see whether he would succeed. They were not in a hurry, because all those who challenged the 10th formation would need quite a lot of time. At most, they would need several months and at least a few days. But when the time it takes for an incense stick to burn was over, Su Ming opened his eyes, and a hint of regret appeared in them. The first 9 formations, or rather, the 10th formation that was formed is a little too low grade. Since I've already formed a shadow body, it can't be of much use. But I'm even more interested in the later runes compared to before. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and a hint of a smile appeared at the corners of his lips. He lifted his right hand, but this time he did not swing his arm. Instead, he pushed at the center of his brow. With it, Su Ming's shadow appeared on the other feng shui compasses, and they instantly gained corporeal form. The 5 feng shui compasses roared and reverberated in the air, causing all the cultivators of 7 Moons sect in the area to be shocked. As their jaws dropped in disbelief, they saw the 5 feng shui compasses overlap with each other in the midst of the intense rumbling. When the 5 feng shui compasses overlapped with each other, Su Ming's illusory figure on them also overlapped with each other. When the booming sounds surged into the sky and shook all the people's hearts, they saw there was only one huge feng shui compass left in the sky at that moment, and right across from Su Ming was another Su Ming. It was Su Ming's shadow. When he stood there, the first to fourth layers of 7 moons sect fell into a moment of dead silence. Then, an uproar that was not any weaker than the previous roars erupted. This, he actually succeeded. The time it takes for an incense stick to burn. It's just the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. That's impossible. He actually cleared the 10th formation. But isn't this too fast? Could it be that the first 10 formations are really that easy for him? Wang Tao, this prodigy from 8 years ago. Could it be that he's going to shock all of 7 Moons sect after remaining silent for 8 years? By the looks of it, it's impossible for him to stop here. Could it be that he wants to challenge the head disciples who are in charge of the mountains and clear the 13th formation? If he can clear the 14th formation, he will obtain 2 shadow figures, and along with his own origin life, it will be the same as him practicing the 3 lives art. What a joke! From the 11th formation onwards, the shadow of punishment will appear. The numerous figures are formed from the shadows of the cultivators we killed over the years. If Wang Tao is lucky, he will run into some of the weaker ones. But if he's not, you can't say that. It will indeed be like this from the 11th formation onwards, but there is a limit to each formation. It's impossible for a figure that surpasses the current formation to appear. Uproars echoed in the air. Compared to the 4th layer's understanding towards the rune, the cultivators in the 3rd layer did not have much of an understanding towards it, but they could still see some clues. In the midst of the uproar, the rainy night was bound to be unforgettable for them. The voices of the outer sect disciple from the 2nd and 1st layers echoed in the air, causing 7 Moons sect to be in an uproar that had never been seen before. Yilong had already lowered his head. He no longer looked at Su Ming. Even the unwillingness to admit defeat in his eyes seemed to have turned dull at that moment, turning into dead silence. He had lost. He had completely lost. It was also at the instant Su Ming cleared the 10th layer that for the first time, he caught the attention of the head disciples who were in charge of the 13 mountains in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky, as well as the powerful warriors whose levels of cultivation were second only to the head disciples. However, the degree of their attention was different due to the difference in the number of formations the head disciples from each line had cleared. The head disciple of the first line, Fei Feng, remained seated in his cave abode. Not a single hint of change could be detected on his face. He did not open his eyes either, as if Su Ming's act of clearing the 10th formation was not a threat to him and was not something that he needed to pay attention to. He was not the only one. Chen Tao of the 2nd line, the man with a slightly sullen face, was also sitting in his cave abode. He did not pay any attention to what was happening around him. Only his eldest senior sister Yu Yan from the 3rd line had been paying attention to Su Ming. Her eyes looked as if there was water in them, and at that moment, a fierce glare gradually appeared in her eyes. "Where is your limit?" the woman asked softly. When more gazes from the cultivators in the 4th layer gathered on Su Ming, he stood on the feng shui compass and slowly lifted his head to stare at the night above him. "I like the night. Then let's see how many formations I can clear before daylight." As he mumbled, Su Ming lifted his right hand and swung it at the sky. 11th formation. As his voice echoed in the air, thunder rumbled. As the clouds tumbled about, they spread out in all directions, revealing a small piece of clear starry night sky. As the starlight shone, it gathered on the feng shui compass where Su Ming was and gradually formed a figure. "Who awakened my shadow? I am Guru Xing Chun, who was killed by the damned sect elder of the 9th line of 7 Moons sect 3,000 years ago. The first night watch was the 4th night watch today. How many monthly votes could he get?" Chapter 15:20. There was endless resentment in that voice, along with a hint of madness born from an unwillingness to admit defeat. When it echoed in all directions, it echoed in 7 Moons sect, and the figure in front of Su Ming on the feng shui compass instantly turned into a shadow. However, the shadow stood upright. It distorted, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into an old man. He had a head full of white hair and was dressed in a long robe that contained stars. Veins popped up on his face, and he glared at Su Ming. 7 moons, sect disciple. 7 moons, sect disciple. Once the old man cast a glance at Su Ming, he immediately started laughing madly. Powerful killing intent rose from his laughter, and it shook the sky. At the instant the old man appeared, cries of surprise came from the first layer of sky beyond the sky. Once the outer sect disciples joined the sect, there were not many who could see the 11th formation of the Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension Rune. At that moment, when they saw it, they immediately paid attention to it. Compared to them, the expressions of the 7 moons sect disciples in the second layer of sky beyond the sky changed. They were much more knowledgeable compared to the outer sect disciples in the first layer. Most of them had seen people challenge the 11th formation, but they had never seen the person who called himself Guru Xingchen appear in the rune. In the past, although there had also been people that had appeared, none of them had ever emitted such overwhelming oppressive might and frantic killing intent like Guru Xingchen. They did not know who Guru Xingchen was, but some of the disciples in the third layer of sky beyond the heavens took a few quick steps when they saw Guru Xingchen. It was as if they wanted to get a closer look at him. Their expressions changed swiftly, and in the end, solemn expressions appeared on their faces. Guru Xingchen was a powerful warrior who brought chaos to ancient Zong 3,000 years ago. Then, he was killed by a sect elder of 7 Moons sect. I didn't expect that this person would be refined into a Tao shadow. I've heard of this person before. I heard that most of the cultivators from 7 Moons sect who joined in the killing of Guru Xingchen were disciples in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky. We might have joined in the battle, but besides a few people, most of us set up sealing runes in the periphery. This Wang Tao, it's going to be a bit difficult for him to get through this spell formation. Of all the people he could have met, he had to meet the infamous Guru Xingchen. While the disciples in the 3rd layer of sky beyond the sky were shocked by Guru Xingchen's appearance and discussed among themselves, the cultivators in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky, who could be said to be the most elite among the disciples in 7 Moons sect, all looked at Guru Xingchen with killing intent that was carved into their bones. During that battle all those years ago, the elders hadn't made an appearance at the beginning, and it was they who were the ones attacking. However, Lord Xingchen had executed some sort of divine ability, causing his cultivation to actually erupt to the terrifying realm of the 1st level of the Tao God realm in a short period of time, and annihilating them was as easy as crushing ants. This was the reason why the elders were furious, and they personally descended here to annihilate Lord Xingchen after a world-shaking battle. No matter how 7 Moons sect performed a secret art that allowed Guru Xingchen to reach the 1st level of the Tao God realm in just a short 6 hours when he was in the initial stage of Avakaniya realm, no matter how 7 Moons sect searched his soul. The secret art might not have lasted for a long time, but it was so heaven-defying that it was enough to catch 7 Moons sect's attention. That was why only Guru Xingchen's body was killed, but his shadow was left behind and sealed in the rune. Most of the disciples in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky knew about these secrets, and it was the first time Guru Xingchen had appeared in the 11th formation over the past 3,000 years. Because of that, when the disciples in the 4th layer looked over, old grudges instantly rose in their hearts. They remembered the wretched state they had been in the past. All their people from the same line had died, and even 3 of the head disciples in charge of the mountain had died. It's that person. It's a pity that I didn't run into a shadow when I challenged the rune in the past, or else I would have definitely taken revenge for senior brother Su. His body was destroyed by the elders, and only his shadow was left behind. His level of cultivation has been reduced to the later stage of plain Culpa realm. With that level of cultivation, it won't be difficult for me to kill him. Wang Tao, kill this person. Wang Tao, this person killed quite a number of 7 Moons sect disciples in the past. Kill him. Such voices rose and fell in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky. When they landed in Su Ming's ears, he cast a glance at Guru Xingchen, and a thought appeared in his heart. With this person's level of cultivation, It's impossible for him to cause chaos in ancient Zong, and it's also impossible for him to mobilize so many cultivators from Seven Moons Sect to surround and seal the place. Even if he's in the initial stage of Avicania realm. Looks like there are quite a number of secrets on Guru Xing Chun. There was the ghost of a smile on Su Ming's lips when he cast Guru Xing Chun a glance. And this is the first time this person has appeared in the 11th formation over the past 3,000 years. I refuse to believe that my luck is so good that I ran into him. There's someone controlling him. Su Ming shook his head. Guru Xing Chun let out a roar and formed a seal with his hands. Immediately, 2 black phoenixes flew out from his hands. As they intersected with each other, they occupied most of the feng shui compass. With piercing screeches, they charged towards Su Ming, and in an instant, they submerged him. You've broken the rules. At the instant the black phoenixes submerged Su Ming's body in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky, a low voice slowly traveled through the air. It echoed in the mountains and landed at the top of the mountain of the 3rd line, where Lon Lon meditated. This person cannot be released. The rune only suppresses him. Sect Elder Lon, I need an explanation for this. Lon Lon opened her eyes from her meditation and softly said, reporting to Sect Master, this matter is a request from Master. If Sect Master has any objections, you can ask Master Lon Lon. Once she said those words, the voice in the air did not speak again. Lon Lon cast her gaze outside, as if she could see through the tower and space to see the feng shui compass where Su Ming was. Master is in isolation, so it's impossible for him to participate in this matter. Only if you destroy this person in front of the disciples in the 4th layer will they accept you. Besides, no one in Seven Moon Sect can find the answer to this person's secret, but I have a feeling that you should be able to, Lon Lon mumbled. The feng shui compass in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky let out a loud bang that shook the sky and earth. In the midst of the booming sounds, the 2 black phoenixes let out shrill screams of pain and slowly dissipated, causing the feng shui compass to become clear once more. Su Ming was still standing there, as if he had not done anything since the start, but Guru Xing Chen's pupil shrank as he stood before him. Bring out your right to bring chaos to an area, or else you are not worthy of me attacking, Su Ming said faintly. His voice was calm, but when it traveled through the area, it stunned the cultivators of Seven Moons Sect in the area. An unprecedentedly solemn expression appeared on Guru Xing Chen's face. He slowly lifted his right hand and swung it at the air. The world immediately roared, and an indistinct crack seemed to have appeared in the sky at that instant. But if anyone took a closer look, they would find that it was not a crack. It was a huge whip that seemed to have appeared from space. It was a red whip, but did not have corporeal form. It was an illusion, and when Guru Xing Chun lifted his right hand, he seized it. Besides having the secret art that allows me to increase my level of cultivation by 1 level in the Tao Divinity realm within a short period of time, the reason why I can reign supreme over an area is because of this whip. It's a pity that besides me, no one in the world knows where the true form of this whip is. And you can only see the illusion formed in my heart by this whip. You won't have the chance to experience its true might, but if you can witness the power of its illusion, it will be your serendipity. A ferocious smile appeared at the corners of Guru Xing Chen's lips. When he lifted his right hand, the vast whip let out a bang, as if it was lashing at the air in the world. In an instant, it turned into a red line that charged towards Su Ming. Su Ming's expression remained the same, but a thought appeared in his heart. The old man spoke too much, and the information he revealed along with the discussions of the people in the area caused a faint smile to appear at the corners of Su Ming's lips when he looked at the old man. The moment that smile appeared, the whip closed in on him. Su Ming took a step forward and lifted his right hand to seize the air. Immediately, he caught the red whip that was closing in on him. But at the instant he touched the whip, a loud bang rang out in Su Ming's heart. Memories instantly rose in his head. They were all his memories from harmonious Morris Alba. At that moment, they tumbled about, as if they were stirred up by the strange power in the whip. Su Ming shuddered. The shadow behind him and his soul felt as if they were about to be pulled out by the whip, as if they were about to be separated from Wang Tao's body. This whip. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He circulated his cultivation base and forced down the tumbling memories brought to him by the whip. When he took another step forward, he held the whip tightly in his right hand and closed in on the dumbfounded Guru Xingchen. Su Ming lifted his left hand and struck the center of Guru Xingchen's brows. A power of soul-seek spread out from Su Ming's left hand. He wanted to search through Guru Xingchen's memories to find the true form of the whip and the secret art that allowed his level of cultivation to increase exponentially for a short period of time. This is impossible. You actually managed to grab my universe whip. When Guru Xingchen saw Su Ming's left hand pressing down on him, a hint of derision suddenly appeared on his face. It caused some of the shock he had felt previously to disappear. No one can search my memories. The 13 great sect elders of Seven Moons sect can't do it, and you can't do it either. At the instant Guru Xingchen laughed loudly. Su Ming pressed his left hand against the center of his brows. When he drew closer, he whispered softly into Guru Xingchen's ear. That's because before me, there were no abyss builders here, and neither was there any reversal of time. He uploaded by Ling and Li Qimei's pictures. This was the second update. There were 4 updates that day, and there were a total of 12,000 words. He was currently writing the 3rd update. Chapter 1521. When Guru Xingchen heard Su Ming's soft whisper, his pupils shrank, but they only shrank for a moment before they became unfocused, as if he had lost his mind. Su Ming pressed his left hand against the center of his brow. The power of time reversal appeared for the first time in ancient Zong, and it fused into Guru Xingchen's soul. At that instant, a picture swiftly appeared in Su Ming's head. In that picture was a man in black robes. That man's face was cold and stern, and he stood on a tall mountain. Before him was a gigantic door floating in the air. At that moment, the door was open. The black-robed man seemed to have taken a step forward, intending to step through it, but he turned his head slightly, as if he wanted to cast a glance at the world before he stepped through. There was a string of pearls on the man's right hand, and there was a red string that connected the 9 pearls together. At the instant Su Ming saw the red string, he remembered the shadow of the space whip Guru Xingchen had swung previously. Those who search for me, Xianzong, may summon the power I left in my homeland during my journey of life and death in the vast expanse. As his voice echoed in the air, the picture disappeared from Su Ming's mind. At the same time, Guru Xingchen let out a shrill scream of pain. His body trembled, and his voice was incredibly shrill. It was also at that moment that snow began falling from the sky above Seven Moons Sect, even though it was supposed to be the rainy season. There seemed to be no end to it, and as it floated down slowly, even the entire western side of ancient Zong started snowing. The east, north, south, and all the regions in ancient Zong, including the 7 sects and 12 clans, had snow fall from the sky at that instant, along with the capital of ancient Zong and all the other parts of the world. At first glance, the falling snow looked like snow, but if anyone took a closer look, they would find that it was like dust. Wherever it went, all the regions in ancient Zong, be it the mountains or the rivers, the 7 sects and 12 clans, or the royal city, seemed to have a decaying presence at that instant. But that decaying presence only appeared for an instant before disappearing. Along with it was the snow that covered all of ancient Zong. Su Ming lifted his left hand. Old Xingchen's eyes were wide with disbelief at that moment. He stared at Su Ming in a daze, and his body started trembling. "Your master," as he muttered, his body exploded into specks of crystalline light. The specks of crystalline light scattered until they turned black and shattered. At the instant the old Xingchen's body disappeared, Seven Moons Sect fell silent. But soon, the loudest buzzing sound ever since Su Ming cleared the Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension rune erupted. It was especially so for the fourth layer of sky beyond the sky. Su Ming's act of killing Guru Xingchun had gained a large number of people's acknowledgement. At that moment, the buzz of discussion was mostly filled with anticipation. The third layer of sky beyond the sky was also the same. Because of that, there were very few people who mocked or disagreed with Su Ming when he challenged the rune. Instead, they accepted his actions and acknowledged him. This acknowledgement turned into a voice at that instant, and it spoke of the 12th formation. The waves of sound reverberated in the air, as if they were pushing Su Ming forward and expecting him to challenge the 12th formation. 12 formations. 12 formations. Wang Tao, challenge the 12th formation. Go to your limit. If you can reach the 14th formation, your second Tao shadow will appear. Wang Tao, you have to clear the 14th formation. Such voices rose and fell. When they echoed in the air, Yilong leaned against the wall of the mountain behind him with a pale face. He stared at Su Ming on the feng shui compass, and at that moment he did not know how to express his complicated and anguished feelings. In the midst of the cheers, Su Ming gradually caught the attention of more powerful warriors from the fourth summit, especially the head disciples from the 13 mountain ranges. At that moment, 7 of them opened their eyes, and their gazes landed on Su Ming. Solemn expressions appeared on their faces. Su Ming had already become a slight threat to the 7 of them. Under their gazes, Su Ming stood on the feng shui compass and closed his eyes, hiding the contemplative light in his eyes due to the scene in his head. Soon after, he opened his eyes. They were calm, and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry. Not a single hint of his emotions could be detected. When he lifted his right hand, he pushed down on the feng shui compass beneath him. With it, the feng shui compass immediately roared. In the blink of an eye, it started rotating. As it did so, the feng shui compass immediately grew to nearly twice its original size. From the distance, it looked incredibly shocking. It floated in midair above 7 Moons Sect. At the instant it rotated, countless runic symbols shone brilliantly on the feng shui compass. They instantly floated out and gathered in front of Su Ming to turn into a figure that was 30 feet tall. That figure was filled with explosive power. It was black, but in the blink of an eye, it gained corporeal form and turned into a man. His entire body was covered in scars. Once his body was completely revealed, he opened his eyes and let out a roar that shook the sky and earth. The great mourning of the desolate immortal who was killed and sealed 8,000 years ago. That's right, it's his shadow. This is the shadow of the rune that will most likely appear in the 12th formation. I've seen the other senior brothers challenge the 12th formation before, and I've also seen the great mourning shadow in 2 states. One of them is like this, and the other is when he goes mad. His power will increase exponentially, and he will reach a terrifying state. As the discussions went on, the 30 feet tall man let out an astonishing roar. I am the shadow of the 12th formation. Unless you can defeat me, you will not be able to advance any further than the 12th formation. As he roared, the man charged towards Su Ming. When he lifted his right hand, the air rumbled, and he threw a punch at Su Ming, instantly closing in on him. Su Ming's expression was calm. At the instant the man closed in on him, he did not move back, but moved forward. Once he took a step forward, he lifted his right hand, clenched his fist, and threw a punch at the incoming man. I've laid low for 8 years. It's time for me to reveal some of my power. At the instant Su Ming said those words flatly, his fist crashed into the man's. Booming sounds surged into the sky at that instant. They shook the ears of all the cultivators in the area, and the man shuddered. He let out a shrill scream of pain, and his right hand crumbled. When he staggered backwards, Su Ming took a step forward with a calm expression. Once he closed in on the man, his right hand turned from a fist to a palm, and he seized the man's neck. With a slight squeeze, the man's screams of pain came to an abrupt end. As he shuddered, veins popped up on his skin. As veins popped up, the man let out a low growl. His body swiftly grew thicker at that instant. Veins filled his entire body, and his strength increased exponentially. His expression was ferocious, and madness appeared in his eyes. In the blink of an eye, he grew from 30 feet to nearly 50 feet tall, and he was still growing. As his body grew larger, Su Ming looked as if he was floating on a feng shui compass, even though he had his hands around his neck. "Get lost!" The man let out a shocking roar. He lifted his hands, intending to seize Su Ming, but before his hands could touch Su Ming's expression did not change. He only exerted force with his right hand, and the man, whose body was clearly still growing stronger, immediately shuddered. Disbelief appeared in his eyes. When his lifted hands fell down, Su Ming also let go. At the instant his body landed lightly on the feng shui compass, the man's body fell with a bang. All the life force in his body had been crushed by Su Ming's forceful squeeze. This crushing did not happen when the man had reached the peak of his madness, but when he continued erupting with power. It might have seemed easier, but only the powerful warriors with extraordinary levels of cultivation could understand the logic behind it. Only then would they understand which was more difficult. The power that caused the man's body to crumble even when he continued erupting with power surpassed that of the suppression after he swung his body to perfection. 13th formation. Su Ming watched the man's body gradually disappear from the feng shui compass. He did not die, but had returned to the rune. He would wake up the next time someone challenged the rune. At that moment, excitement appeared on the faces of the Seven Moons sect cultivators in the area. Before Su Ming challenged the rune, they would never have thought that they would be able to see such a scene. In fact, even when Su Ming had just challenged a rune, they had not expected that he would be able to reach such a level. The 13th formation was a checkpoint. It was a checkpoint for the disciples of the fourth layer of sky beyond heavens. There weren't many disciples of the fourth layer who could pass this checkpoint. Only the head disciples of the mountain masters or the experts of their respective mountain ranges could do it. To most of the disciples, clearing the 12th formation was already their limit, because the guardian shadow of the 13th formation was an existence that most disciples could not clear. Because of that, the inner sect disciples in Seven Moons sect had a classification for the 13th formation that did not belong to the sect rules. The carp leaping over Dragon's Gate. Those who passed through the 13th formation would no longer be normal disciples, but powerful warriors. They were powerful warriors among the inner sect disciples in Seven Moons sect. These sort of powerful warriors could occupy more resources in the sect, obtain better cultivation bases, and possess statuses that were even more eye-catching. There were less than 100 disciples in the entire fourth layer of sky beyond the sky who had cleared the 13th formation. And at that moment, Su Ming wanted to challenge the carp leaping over Dragon's Gate rune. As he spoke, the excited gazes of the cultivators in the area fell on him, and the feng shui compass rotated with loud bangs. At the instant its size increased exponentially, an ancient voice echoed in the rune. The 13th formation has always been personally guarded by my shadow body. Sect Elder Wang, hello. When his voice echoed in the air, a black shadow appeared on the feng shui compass. It instantly became clear, and it turned into an old man dressed in a white robe. Su Ming had seen the old man 8 years ago. He was one of the 13 sect elders who had come before him. Third update, please get monthly votes. Chapter 1522. You can call me Sect Elder Mu. I am Mu Jun, the leader of the 11th line in Seven Moons sect. As the ancient voice echoed in the air, the old man's expression was calm. He took a slow step towards Su Ming. There was no shadow beneath him. It was just as he said. What appeared before him was only his shadow. Seven Lives art is a cultivation method that only the direct descendants of Seven Moons sect can practice. But in truth, the ultimate goal of this art is to form a Tao shadow, the shadow of the Tao, the old man said faintly while looking at Su Ming. And the Tao shadow is not something you can understand with your current potential. Sect Elder Wang, you're not my opponent. I advise you to give up. The old man's expression was calm, but there was a hint of arrogance in his voice. It was invisible, and all those who heard it could sense it very clearly. To the disciples of Seven Moons sect, this sort of arrogance was very normal. They would not dislike it, but Su Ming frowned. Since you are also a sect elder, I don't want to make you lose too much face. I also want to give sect elder Lon face. Oh well, I can make the decision. I won't fight back. You have 3 chances to attack. As long as you can make me take half a step back, you will pass the rune. But sect elder Wong, this will only happen once. If you continue challenging the 13th formation, then don't blame me for not showing mercy. From the moment the old man in white appeared, he looked as if he was talking to himself. Each of his words gave off a feeling that he was superior to others, and his final words were filled with great arrogance. Su Ming's frown relaxed at that moment. The ghost of a smile appeared on his face, and once he cast the old man a glance, he said faintly, "If that's the case, then I will thank you, sect Elder Mu. If that's the case, then I'll thank Elder Mu. I'll listen to you. Are you ready? I don't need to prepare. You can attack at any time," the old man said faintly. His expression might have been calm, but the arrogance in his words was still there. In truth, he did indeed have the right to be arrogant. His real body was in the 2nd level of Tao Divinity realm, and even his clone was in the later stage of Avicania realm. His status as a respected sect elder in Seven Moons sect made his arrogance a habit. In fact, he was already used to his current posture, and he did not find it uncomfortable at all. Su Ming nodded and moved forward. When he lifted his right hand, he did not clench it into a fist. Instead, when he closed in on the old man, he pointed forward. At the instant he did so, the old man's pupil shrank, but only shrank for a moment before Su Ming's finger touched 7 inches away from the old man's body. An arc-shaped barrier instantly appeared and blocked Su Ming's finger. That barrier started fluctuating rapidly, as if it was continuously negating the power of Su Ming's finger. The old man's narrowed pupils calmed down at that moment. He smiled faintly, but just as he was about to speak, a bang rang out, and the barrier shattered. As it did so, Su Ming's right hand shot through it, and with one finger, he tapped the old man's lifted arm. "Begone," Su Ming said faintly. Since he had already challenged the rune, he did not think about holding back too much of his power. Instead, he wanted to gradually spread it out to verify a guess he had. 8 years ago, the great sect elder of the 3rd line in the sky-blue Taoist robe had taken him in as his disciple, allowing him to become the 14th sect elder of Seven Moons sect. When he said those words, the old man's expression changed drastically. He instinctively wanted to retreat, but he forced himself to endure it. His body twisted as if it was about to scatter, but in the end, he still could not withstand the power from Su Ming's finger. He staggered several dozens of steps backwards against his will. When he finally stopped, his expression continued changing. Sometimes it was sullen, sometimes it was aloof, and sometimes it was shocked. When he looked at Su Ming, there was a complicated look in his eyes. In the end, without another word, he turned around and swung his arm, disappearing from the feng shui compass. At that moment, all the people in the various layers of sky beyond the sky in Seven Moons sect cried out in surprise. They might have had incredibly high hopes for Su Ming, but they did not expect that the 13 formations, which could be said to be the barrier between the sky and the earth to many people, would be so easily cleared by Su Ming. In fact, quite a number of people instantly came to the conclusion that sect Elder Mu Jun had done it on purpose. Even some of the cultivators in the 4th layer had such a guess in their hearts. Only the disciples in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky, who had cleared the 13 formations, had solemn expressions on their faces. The sight of Su Ming's finger had caused their hearts to tremble. It was especially so for the head disciples of the 7 mountain leaders. At that moment, their expressions became even more solemn. Su Ming had cleared the 13 formations, which meant that he already possessed a level of cultivation that was similar to theirs. However, due to the ease with which Su Ming had cleared the 13 formations, a great amount of pressure was placed on them. This invisible pressure caused their gazes to become even more serious as they stared at Su Ming. In fact, even the head disciple of the 2nd line, Chun Tao, who had cleared the 17th formation, opened his eyes at that moment and looked at Su Ming. A solemn look that was rarely seen on his face appeared on his face. The 14th formation, Lanlan's disciple Yu, the woman who had cleared the 16th formation, had her eyes burning brightly at that moment. Su Ming had shocked her again and again. The 14th formation, Su Ming said faintly. He lifted his right foot and stepped on the feng shui compass. A hint of expectation appeared in his eyes. He looked forward to the 14th formation splitting apart, and it was a split in the shadow of his 7 lives art. The booming sounds from the 14th formation shook the sky. At that instant, the runic symbols on the feng shui compass where Su Ming was shown brilliantly. As they reverberated in the air, they spread out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the countless runic symbols squirmed and turned into Su Ming. It was as if there were countless shrunken versions of him around him at that moment. Soon after, a mighty pressure that made even Su Ming feel slightly uncomfortable descended on him with a bang. It was as if the sky had collapsed, and it pressed down on Su Ming's body, causing his soul, his consciousness, and everything in his body to be split apart at that instant. If it had been any other disciple who had cleared the 14th formation, they would have sat down a long time ago and circulated their cultivation bases to fight against the pressure. But Su Ming had indeed lifted his head slowly and looked at the sky where the mighty pressure was coming from. He swept his gaze past the figures formed by the countless runic symbols around him. The mighty pressure is still not enough. I can't create a second shadow body. Su Ming frowned, and a resolute look appeared on his face. He lifted his right hand and struck the center of his brows with a bang. With it, Su Ming's entire body let out a bang. His cultivation base immediately became chaotic, and the pressure in the world around him increased exponentially. At the same time, the shadow under Su Ming's feet instantly started distorting. Still lacking a little, a pensive light shone in Su Ming's eyes. He lifted his right hand and formed a seal before he tapped his chest. A cyclone formed in his body and turned into a seal that sealed 3/10 of his cultivation base. As his cultivation base was sealed, the pressure from the world around him became even greater, causing the feeling that his body was about to be split to become even stronger. I need to do this again. Su Ming did not change the seal he formed with his right hand. He tapped his dantian region, and the cyclone immediately appeared in his body again to turn into the second seal. Su Ming did not stop moving his right hand. When he lifted it, he tapped the center of his brows again. Immediately, the third seal appeared in his heart. The 3 seals instantly sealed 9/10 of Su Ming's cultivation base, causing his body to shudder for the first time. This scene had long since been seen by the 7 Moons sect disciples in the area. Almost all of them had dumbfounded expressions on their faces. They did not know what Su Ming was doing. Only Yuyan's pupils shrank, and she stood up for the first time. She took a few brisk steps forward and arrived beside the cliff. She stared at Su Ming, and a hint of shock gradually appeared on her face. What level of cultivation does he have? This method is the exact same as Fei Feng's during the 14th formation. He needs to seal his own cultivation base before he can create a shadow body. She was not the only one who had lost her composure at that moment. The pupils of Chun Tao from the second line shrank, and he stood up swiftly. He might not have walked out of his cave abode like Yuyan, but a hint of shock appeared on his face. In fact, Fei Feng, who had been meditating with his eyes closed and was the strongest disciple of this generation in 7 Moons sect, opened his eyes a slit, and a brilliant light shone in them. Wang Tao, he mumbled softly. The 3 of them were not the only ones who reacted this way. At that moment, the expressions of the 13 sect elders in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky and the hundreds of thousands of cultivators from the other lines changed. They paid attention to everything that happened to Su Ming. This person is either hiding his level of cultivation or his potential. I can't imagine what level of cultivation he has right now. Could it be that he has already attained great completion in Avicania realm? All the lines have their master's messages regarding Wang Tao's cultivation. They are not to interfere with him or stop him. If the great sect elders are paying so much attention to him, Even if he reveals great completion in Avacania realm, I won't be surprised. But Mu Jun, you are the first sect elder to directly attack him. You should be the judge. Great completion in Avacania realm. A cold harumph came from the 11th mountain. It was Mu Jun's voice. At the instant the crowd's voices echoed in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky in Seven Moons sect, Su Ming threw his head back and let out a low roar. As his voice echoed in the air, the shadow under him immediately distorted and overlapped with each other. In an instant, a second shadow appeared under him. It was the shadow that Su Ming had formed the earliest, but once it appeared, a third shadow appeared. The third shadow was rather indistinct, but at the instant it appeared, banging sounds came from Su Ming's body. Once all the seals on him were undone, his cultivation base erupted with a bang, causing the indistinct shadow to become clear and complete. 15th formation. Su Ming's voice echoed in the air, causing the entire area to tremble. It was also at that moment that the night in the distance seemed to be about to pass. Dawn was about to arrive. There was a question that had been corrected. Chapter 1523. For the sake of today's 4th chapter, I woke up at 8 in the morning and started writing. By noon, I had written a chapter and a half. I uploaded a chapter at noon and continued writing in the afternoon. Up until now, I had just finished writing the 4th chapter. The more I wrote, the slower I became. The more I wrote, the more tired I became. I haven't counted how many chapters one have written this month, but I'm sure that I have definitely written more than 40 chapters. I have already completed half of the promise of 80 chapters. There is still half of the road, and I will persevere. I'm not afraid of being tired. I can grit my teeth when I am angry. However, the monthly votes are not many. It makes me feel powerless from the bottom of my heart. I want the monthly votes. Chapter 1524. 15th formation. When those 3 words tumbled out of Su Ming's mouth, the feng shui compass beneath him rotated with a bang. The runic symbols shone with a light that reached 100,000 feet at the moment dawn was about to arrive. The light was so strong that it instantly shook the sky and earth, causing Su Ming to become the center of attention in Seven Moons sect. At the same time, 2 shadows of Su Ming appeared around him. When they gained corporeal form, they turned into 2 other Su Ming besides his real self. At first glance, Su Ming's real body was in the middle, and the shadow bodies by his sides had power that did not seem to be any weaker than his real bodies. One of them looked at the sky with an incredibly arrogant air, while the other looked at the ground with an astonishing arrogance. All the disciples from the 1st layer to the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky and Seven Moons sect looked at Su Ming at that instant, and even the buzzing and uproar disappeared. The place turned into dead silence. But soon, an uproar that was even stronger than before echoed in the air like a roar. 14th formation. His shadow body has split into 2. As expected of the person known as the most prodigy in the past, it's no wonder why he was taken in as the great sect elder's disciple. It's no wonder why he could become a sect elder. That's right, so that's how it is. This person's potential is so great that it's rare in ancient Zong. This sort of person should be a sect elder. Even if it's eldest senior brother Fei Feng and Chun Tao, they might be above the 17th formation, but they've been practicing cultivation for many years, and Wang Tao has only been in the sect for a few years. There's no way they can compare. Just watch. In the future, Wang Tao will definitely rise to power alone in Seven Moons sect. What Wang Tao? He should be sect elder Wang. Discussions rose and fell. Quite a number of the inner sect disciples in the 4th layer had similar discussions, causing the disciples from the 3rd line to become even more excited. They had been grumbling in the beginning, but by then, they had become excited. After all, Su Ming was of the same generation as their uncle master, and had also proved his monstrous potential. Yu Yin was silent, but when she looked at Su Ming, a hint of fighting spirit appeared in her eyes. She was not the only one. At that moment, Chun Tao, who was in the 2nd line, had also walked out of his cave abode. He stood by the cliff and stared at Su Ming. At that moment, the threat Su Ming gave him was incredibly great. It was not hostility, but a competition between fellow disciples. Cultivation is about fighting, Chun Zhao murmured, his eyes brimming with a desire to fight. As for Yilong, he was already numb to it. He stared at Su Ming and listened to the uproars and 7 moons sect rise and fall during the night. He could no longer sense any bitterness, because it was as if his blood had already turned into bitterness. Su Ming ignored the changes in the people around him. At that moment, he stood on the rapidly spinning feng shui compass. He could clearly sense the benefits of the feng shui compass and his own strength. At that moment, if he had 2 shadow bodies, his strength would increase by leaps and bounds. He might not be able to truly fight against those in Tao's spirit realm, but he would be able to protect himself. This was his confidence. If he was given enough time to refine and cultivate these 2 shadow bodies, then he could faintly feel that with these 2 shadow bodies, he might be able to attempt to break through to the Tao spirit realm. If I have 3 shadow bodies, then my chances of reaching Tao's spirit realm will be higher. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. When the feng shui compass beneath him roared, snowflakes floated down from it. They were slightly different from before. They did not fall on the entire land of ancient Zong, but only appeared on the feng shui compass. When they fell, they were filled with a chilling air, and in the blink of an eye, they covered the entire area. Starting from the 15th formation, it will be the shadows of the 4 great veins of heaven: winter, autumn, summer, and spring. The difficulty of these 4 formations is incredibly high, or else Yin wouldn't have stopped at the 17th formation and me at the 18th formation. Since ancient times, if we don't count the disciples who disappear in the passage of time, eldest senior brother Fei Feng is the only one in the current generation of 7 Moons sect who has successfully cleared 18 formations and 19 formations. Chen Tao said faintly while he stood on the mountain belonging to the 2nd line and stared at the snow falling from the feng shui compass beneath Su Ming. This Wang Tao might have good potential, but if he is only good, he will die young. I wonder how many of the shadows of the 4 great veins of heaven he will be able to understand. What do you think, Yin? Chen Tao smiled faintly. When he spoke, Yin walked out slowly from behind him and stood beside him while looking at Su Ming. The 4 seasons have shadows, and this is the shadow of heaven. The 7 lives art uses the first life, which is the human life. The second, and third lives are the earthen lives. Once the human life receives earthen aura, it will fade away. The 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th lives are the heavenly lives. They have to be understood from the 4 seasons. Once the 7 lives are formed, they can fuse together to form the first Tao shadow. Only then can they be considered to have completed the first stage of the strongest art in 7 Moons sect, 7 Shadows Tao, Yu Yin said calmly. Even if only one of the 7 Shadows Tao appears, it will allow a person to step straight into the first level of Tao Divinity Realm. If he is already in the first level of Tao Divinity Realm, he can reach the 2nd level. Chen Tao smiled faintly. His words were calm, but when he spoke, he shook his head. Both of us are reminding him. I have my own goals. What about you? Yu Yin did not speak. While on the feng shui compass, Su Ming lifted his head at that moment and looked towards the 2nd mountain range. There, he saw 2 figures, and in his ears he could still hear their words, which were clearly something that could be transmitted. 7 Shadows Tao. A contemplative look appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He slowly sat down cross-legged on the feng shui compass. When he did so, the 2 shadow figures beside him also meditated. Time trickled by. More snow fell from the sky, and the freezing air became even colder. In the distance, the night finally disappeared, and dawn appeared. The sun rose. The 4 great veins of heaven are said to contain 4 great divine abilities since ancient times. Right now, we have each understood a few styles. I wonder whether Wang Tao will be able to understand them. Chen Tao smiled, but when he looked at Su Ming, a solemn expression appeared on his face. Yu Yin still did not speak. Time trickled by. Gradually, The sun rose, and a new day arrived. Su Ming's original plan was to end the challenge of the rune at daybreak, but he changed his mind. The rune had provided him with quite a lot of help. Since he had already challenged it, he should enjoy it to the fullest. When noon arrived, more snow fell on the feng shui compass. By then, it had already covered half of Su Ming's body. He still did not open his eyes. Under his eyelids, a large amount of deductions shone in his pupils, and an epiphany that only he knew shone in them. Snow has a shadow. This shadow is faint under the sun, but if I look closely, I can see that it's not difficult to clear the 15 formation. It was not difficult to pass through the 15 formations, as long as one could find the shadows of the snowflakes and comprehend the shadows of the snow, then understand that all living things have shadows, and then control the shadows of the snow. It would be equivalent to understanding the clues hidden in the 15 formations. But I don't like the day. When dusk gradually darkened and the sun was about to disappear, Su Ming opened his eyes. Almost at the instant he did so, the sun completely set in the world, causing the world to turn dark. At that moment, Su Ming opened his eyes and slowly lifted his right hand. My life matrix has always been moving from midwinter to spring. It has always been moving from death to life. The snow in winter is the death in my life matrix, and it is the midwinter in my life matrix. It's incredibly easy for me to use winter as the 15 formation, but what I want is not the shadow of snow covering the ground during the day. What I want is the shadow of the entire night sky covering winter during the night. This shadow is not the shadow of snow, but the shadow of the winter sky. By the looks of it, the Seven Lives art isn't very suitable for me. What truly suits me is that this art's light is too bright. It is the strongest during the day, and when its shadow is hidden during the night, it is the weakest. What I need should be the Seven Abyss art I modified. Once I master this art, the shadow of the world during the night will be my shadow. A powerful dark light shone in Su Ming's eyes. At the instant he lifted his right hand, he did not grab the drifting snow. Instead, he swung his arm, and the sky above him immediately looked as if it had turned into his sleeve to cover the sky. Booming sounds reverberated in the air, and the drifting snowflakes instantly turned black. It was not that their color had changed, but that they had been dyed black by the night. The snow around Su Ming also turned completely black at that instant. At that moment, Su Ming slowly stood up, the shadow of the winter sky. At the instant he spoke faintly, the snow around him shuddered with a bang and spread out from the feng shui compass to fall on the fourth layer of sky beyond the sky. At the same time, the third, second, and first layers of sky beyond the sky were filled with black snow falling from Su Ming's hand. This was the first time black snow fell from the first 4 layers of sky beyond the sky in Seven Moons Sect. At the same time, Su Ming lifted his head. At the instant he looked at the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky, booming sounds shook the sky and earth. In the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky, black snow that belonged to Su Ming also floated down. All of Seven Moons Sect was silent. Chen Tao stared at the black snow falling from the sky in a daze. He instinctively lifted his hand, and when the snowflake landed on his palm, it turned into a sharp stab of pain. When he lowered his head to look, he found that it was not a snowflake, but a small piece of the shadow of the sky, formed by the reflection of the night on the snowflake. Yu Yan's face turned pale. When she lifted her head, Chen Tao also lifted his head to look at the night sky. At that moment, the night sky looked as if it had shattered and turned into an endless amount of black snow that fell on the world. It was not snow, but the shadow of the sky. Fei Feng, the head disciple of the first line of Seven Moons Sect who meditated all year round, opened his eyes and walked out of his cave abode. With a calm expression, he lifted his head to look at the sky. At that moment, the sect elders in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky also looked at the sky. Their expressions were grave, and in silence, a hint of shock appeared in some of their eyes. In the 6th layer of sky beyond the sky was the red-robed man, Dao Han. At that moment, He stood at the top of the mountain belonging to the 13th line of the 6th layer of sky beyond the sky. When he looked at the sky, his pupils shrank. He saw the snow falling from the 6th layer of sky beyond the sky. With his current level of cultivation, he managed to gain an epiphany and create a divine ability in Tao's spirit realm. This person is indeed extraordinary, the red-robed man said softly, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.